to order. It's 3 o'clock, 3:01. Item 1.0, call to order. If you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Traffic and Parking Commission, you may appeal the decision by filing a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Commissioner's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. Item 2.0, approval of a day's agenda. Do we have a first?
So moved.
We have a second? First and second, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It is passed. Item 3.0, approval of September 9th, 2024's meeting minutes. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been first and second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? It is passed. So we have a sign-in sheet for public comment. We're going to go down one at a time and allow each person to speak for 2 minutes for the item that you're here to speak on. So first we'll have Rachel Blackhurst with NAIOP. And you were speaking on item 7.3. And while you're taking a seat, I'll just read. 7.3 is the authorization to extend the downtown sidewalk vending restriction into the Gulch, including the area bounded by Broadway, 12th Avenue South, Division Street, and 8th Avenue South. This is requested by Gulch stakeholders and NDOT. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair and members. I'm Rachel Blackhurst. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for NAIOP, which is the Commercial Real Estate Development Association. NAIOP supports the vending map update for several reasons, including just, vending in the right-of-way in the Gulch is negatively impacting brick and mortar businesses. We're hearing that frequently from our members who are property owners in the area. Additionally, many property owners and businesses receive complaints from customers and employees about aggressive and sometimes inappropriate vending. And some of these businesses have indicated that this might lead to their, not renewing a lease and opting to relocate to a different location outside of the Gulch. And we want to keep in mind the Gulch is one of the city's most successful revitalization projects, and we do not want to do anything to take away from that and see it decline. We have recently worked with Councilmember Coopin on an updated noise ordinance in that area, really because of the Gulch's unique position as both a business district and a heavy residential district. Primary foot traffic in the Gulch is people who live and work there and frequent those businesses. Do you want to just pass on the best way possible? We do have this petition signed by over 100 residents and business owners in the Gulch supporting the change to the vending map. Thank you. Very stressful watching your time tick down.
Thank you.
Would you like me to give you this petition?
Yes, staff will take it. Ms. Blankenship, if you don't mind, Blackhurst, I was reading down, I'm sorry. You said the majority of traffic there is mainly people residential, and do you have any data?
I don't, sorry, not with me.
Okay.
I'm happy to get you some data though too.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Mr. Dirk Melton with Market Street Enterprises. Please state your name for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Sure. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Dirk Melton, President of Market Street Enterprises. Market Street's been the master developer of the Gulch neighborhood. we've had some growing pains along the way, one of which is the matter before you today with the street vending issue. We've seen how successful the no vending zone has been in the downtown core for the past 2 years. Your decision to protect pedestrian safety and the quality of life downtown is to be commended. That said, an unintended consequence of that action was for street vendors to move to the next location with the most foot traffic, and that location happened to be the Gulch. Our company offices in the center of the neighborhood, overlooking Noble Park. Since the vendors relocated to the Gulch, our sidewalks are at times impassable, forcing pedestrians onto the streets. The pedestrian heat map on page 16 of your agenda analysis shows very clearly how busy the sidewalks are today, which coincidentally is where most of the street vendors put up shop. Considering all the data, the case for protecting pedestrian safety and leaving our sidewalks clear of obstruction could not be more clear. We're very grateful to Councilmember Cupin and our friends at NDOT, NAIOP, and the Nashville Downtown Partnership, their role in this effort, and respectfully request your support of this initiative. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Jeanette Banker with the Downtown Partnership. If you don't mind, state your name for the record. And that the red light means the mic's on, so we should be good now. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Jeanette Barker. I am the VP of Strategic Development with the Nashville Downtown Partnership. So we are a nonprofit. We work to serve all of downtown's stakeholders. Today, that includes 20,000 residents, 80,000 daytime and nighttime workers, and over 3,000 businesses. Downtown is actually 11 smaller neighborhoods within the downtown loop, and Gulch, of course, is one of them. And we did write a letter that was sent earlier today to this commission, but I wanted to just repeat and read aloud some of the data points that speak to why we are in favor of this vending zone, no vending zone expansion. The Gulch is today home to 7,000 residents, and this is only in 91 acres, which is the footprint of the Gulch. That population is growing very quickly. From everything that is under development now or planned, we know that that will be a 25% increase of the resident population over the next 5 years. Additionally, we know that the Gulch is home to many daytime workers and very popular with visitors. So I know you asked the question of Rachel earlier, and I could get some of that data for you, but I don't have it handy as far as the mix. But what we do know, we have been running some data. We use a software called Placer AI when we're looking at population and density figures, and we practically see the same density of foot traffic within the two business improvement districts when you look at it per acre. Today, that's 49,000 people per acre in the Gulch Business Improvement District compared to 53,000 people per acre in the Central Business Improvement District. So knowing the great work that this commission did in 2023, we think that this should apply in the Gulch as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Council Member Eslick, are you here to talk on item 7.3?
Yes.
Okay.
No, 7.072.
Okay. I'm gonna let you go next if that's okay. Excuse me, Lisa Leclerc? Here on item 7.3. Again, state your name for the record, and you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Lisa Leclerc, President and CEO of the Greater Nashville Hospitality Association. I've spoken to this group before. Thank you, Commissioners and Chair. We appreciate the work that you do and the decisions that you make to help keep Nashville very safe and clean. And I think that for both of our residents and our visitors, it's a critical part of who Nashville is and how we will keep our wonderful reputation that we have. As previously mentioned, I think that the restrictions that were put in the downtown core have made a tremendous difference. The ability for people to move around the city by foot without obstruction is terribly important, and we need to continue that effort in the Gulch area as well. So thank you for your support on this.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Eslick? You don't don't mind saying your name for the record.
I'm Jeff Eastlick, District Councilperson for District 11, Old Hickory. I'm here to speak today again on the proposal to lower the speed limit on Lebanon Road. As I understand, today it's going to be as a phased portion, and they're going to consider one phase before getting to the part of mine and Councilperson Jordan's area. I say I'm against this, but that's not the point. If I felt like this would slow down and get people to not speed, then I would be for it, hands down. It's the top concern when it comes to emails that I get on a daily basis. People want to know why they can't control the people using the middle lane or speeding through children's school zones, and at night when they're doing burnouts and other things. I don't think lowering the speed limit by any amount is going to stop that without enforcement. Based on the data I got from Nashville.gov and have been sent by Captain Jones, the traffic stops in 2018 amounted to over 200,000. We had 80 traffic fatalities according to that data during that year. In 2023, there were just over 29,000, an 85% decrease in traffic stops. The fatalities went to 139, about a 75% increase in traffic fatalities. So it looks like if you don't make as many speed enforcement stops, then people are going to speed and we're going to have more accidents. At the same time, if you looked at the data, you would see that the speeding is down. But that's because of a lack of enforcement, not because the speeding is actually down. What I'm looking for is more enforcement of the current laws before we make new laws and then reevaluate the data and try to go from there. Again, if it works, I'm for it. Until we enforce it, I'm not. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, with that, the public comment section is closed. We'll move on to item 5.0, approval of the consent agenda. Item 5.1, authorization for new pedestrian hydrant beacon near 2500 Clarksville Pike, requested by NDOT. Item 5.2, authorization for new one-way traffic configuration on Love Circle, requested by NDOT. Authorization to replace existing taxi stand with new time-limited passenger loading/unloading only, and for new bus permit parking only, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., 7 days a week, with paid parking during all other hours for the east side of Representative John Lewis Way between Demumbrium Street, Korean Veterans Boulevard, requested by NDOT. And then 5.4, authorization for new residential permit parking at 477 Chestnut Street, requested by a resident. Do we need to pull any of these items to the regular agenda?
Can we pull 5.3 and 5.4?
Any other items? So I'm requesting a motion to approve the consent agenda for items 5.1 and 5.2, and then to move items 5.3 and 5.4 to the regular agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5.0 has passed. So we'll move to 6.0, the regular agenda. Item 5.3, authorization to replace existing taxi stand with new time-limited passenger loading and unloading. Staff, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Mason. NDOT was approached by stakeholders down in this area, specifically Country Music Hall of Fame, requesting the ability to temporarily park a bus during the middle of the day for their during their shift changeovers, and we've agreed to a bus permit parking request, and so we only need it during a very time limited part of the day between 11 and 1, and we're requesting pay parking during other times at that location. This is in the area that's closer to the intersection with the Mumbrian. It's outside of the turning queue, and it's something we can accommodate a 40-foot bus vehicle there, and that's also about the equivalent of two passenger automobile parking spaces. The other part of the request is to convert the existing taxi stand, which is a little bit to the south of that location, and we're asking to replace that with passenger loading and unloading only. And I think that's time limited. I think we're looking at about a 30-minute maximum. It's to allow people to load and unload bus vehicles and other vehicles. Taxis would still be able to load and unload there, but they wouldn't be able to just sit and sit and sit and sit at all hours of the day.
Thank you. Any questions?
Sure. So the request is for just those couple of spaces? It's the 45-foot bus parking spot and then a taxi stand, which is a spot?
The passenger loading and unloading would take the place of the existing taxi stand. There's also a valet that is even further to the south, and we're not touching that curb space.
And on that street itself, is there other bus parking too?
Not on Rep. John Lewis Way on that block face. There's some bus parking, I believe some tour buses are using on the Mumbrian, but not on Rep. John Lewis Way.
But in changing it from a taxi stand and allowing for shared use and Connect Downtown Commission, Diana Allercone, excuse me, and Connect Downtown, it actually looks at taking the space and making it shared space. So during typical times when you need to provide for, let's say, loading and unloading of buses or for goods and services, the space would be used for that. And then at other times, it would be used for shared parking, not shared parking, excuse me, for shared passenger, such as for taxi, TNCs, Uber, Lyft, stuff like that. So what we're proposing is that this space actually become more of a shared space than that of just being available for taxis. So buses will be able to use it during designated times, but then the other time it'll be available for passenger drop off and pickup as well as for Uber and Lyft. So it's allowed, it's moving toward our Connect Downtown. And since we got the request, we just kind of involved rolling that forward because we already have the space built.
So I got two things there. One, I think I got on the Vaughan Lane bus at the south side of that street. So is that a bus permit or is that just a loading situation? Do you have an idea?
It's just a loading. So the permit that we're giving is for the bus permit we're giving is allowing a bus to only use that space, and you don't have to have a permit to use it. And that's going to allow for a little bit of a designated time. They bring folks in, drop them off, and then pick them back up. They're not there for a long extended stay. But then there's the rest of the space that's all along John Lewis Way that'll allow for a 15-minute drop off and pick up. So the bigger tour buses will be allowed as well.
And what's the pay parking spot?
So in the evening, when there is no unloading or delivery of goods and stuff, that space will be converted and become paid. So what we're doing, again, it's about sharing the curb and not necessarily designating it for one use. It's that when it needs to be for goods and services, it's available. And, based on all of the studies that were done in Connect Downtown, it looked at those different time frames. So typically in the morning when goods and services are being delivered for the restaurants all along that way, even for the convention center, whatever it is, or even the bus pickup and pickoff, it acts in that capacity. But after hours, it can act in the capacity of paid parking that can allow folks to have a place to park when they come downtown. So again, we're moving towards shared space, and that space being multiple things at different times of the day. And that's what we're actually bringing forward, and that's what Connect Downtown does.
I totally understand that. I'm sorry if maybe it just needs to be visual for me on this one, but the way this says is there's approval of new bus parking, and then there's paid parking during all other hours. And then number 2 is approval of new time-limited passenger loading, unloading 30-minute limit.
Correct.
24/7.
Correct. So basically during the morning or afternoon, during actual hours when typically a tour is occurring, the buses will be able to park there for up to 30 minutes to load and unload. Because keep also in mind, some of these buses are actually dropping folks off that are going to be staying at the hotel there. So this provides them the ample time in which to load and load. So we're asking to provide the 30-minute unloading and loading for the buses. But it'll also act in that capacity where it would also serve a delivery truck, for example, for a 30-minute. So it's going to become a 30-minute loading and loading, mainly geared toward the big tour buses. And there's quite a few of them that actually come in and they stop and they actually are either staying at the Omni, or they might be visiting the Omni, or there might be a tour that's going to be going to or from the Omni, as well as for the Country Hall of Fame. But the Country Hall of Fame actually brings tons of people in on a daily basis and out via a bus. So we are working with them, and that would be the folks that get the bus pass.
So
And-
you can get a bus pass. That is one thing you could get there. Or you could do other 30-minute loading.
Correct,
At any other time of the day.
correct. So typically.
Or you could pay to park.
After hours. So basically, again, to set it up, for example, let's say between the hours of 7 and 4, it's going to be an unloading zone and also a passenger 30-minute unloading zone. So anyone can come in, drop off a passenger and move on. What they can't, and the most that they can stay is 30 minutes. And that again is put into place to assist with the buses, because typically these are big buses. They're carrying about 50 people, and it takes a while to unload a coach, especially if you have folks that are of elderly age. Not trying to put anyone down, but that is typically the type of customer they're seeing in that area. And then after, let's say 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, and I'm not 100% sure of the time, so I'm just using an example, that would then no longer be available for bus parking or for passenger loading and loading. It would become paid parking. So when it says paid parking at all other hours, it doesn't mean the two work at the same time. It's like, it's one thing during the day, it'll become something else in the evening. So it shares the curb, but it does two different things at two different times.
The parking zone is a 45-foot zone. The passenger loading and unloading is separate from that. It's outside of that footprint. So the 45 feet we're talking about for bus permit parking is closer to the corner during the off hours. That is, outside of 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., it would become paid parking. To the south of that, there is an existing taxi stand. That existing taxi stand would then become passenger loading and unloading. So we're talking about two different curb uses, but because they are adjacent to one another, we included those in the same request.
That helps to explain the difference, I think. That was my confusion.
Yeah.
Because it sounded like we were talking about the same
No.
space. So it's the first 45 feet is just the bus and the paid parking after that. And then the taxi stand, we're converting to paid parking spots.
That's correct.
Are our system set up to support, if someone is coming to park, say around 10 o'clock, it'll limit them for an hour in that area? Or how would it?
Yes, the system that we have brought in front of you in the past is actually set up to help us manage the curb so that someone doesn't abuse it. So as we move forward and get that actually up and going, it would be monitoring the curb to make sure that everyone's behaving just like they're supposed to.
For the tour buses, how will they get the parking designation?
They do not need a parking designation. They'll have space in which they'll be able to pull in and load and unload. They will only have 30 minutes to do it, though. So it's available to anyone that wants to come in, and again, a 30-minute loading. That's the maximum time they have. And we're only, for some, depending on who's coming, sometimes it doesn't take 30 minutes. But again, trying to be respectful, if they're bringing in a tour that's staying at the Omni, it does take a little bit of time to get everybody off the bus and then actually take the luggage out as well. So 30-minute was the time, and talking with the folks, the businesses, of what they felt it would take, and that's why we settled on 30 minutes.
And one last question, going back to what was said before, if a car is parked in that area, say 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, the designation changes, will there be signage there that will be able to explain that clearly enough that someone comes back and the car is not there, they'll understand that it's been
Yes,
towed?
sir. There will be very clear signage.
Sorry, I'm back on a circle. So the buses will only be there for 30 minutes,
The buses are given up to 30
for
minutes.
30 minutes.
Yep.
And then the passenger loading area, which is the converted taxi stand, that is the normal, you've got 3 minutes?
The passenger loading and unloading is 30 minutes. That's available for buses, for ride shares, for taxis, for anybody. The bus parking permit is also limited, but it's limited in hours. But again, these are two different zones. The northern end, the northern 45 feet is for bus parking only from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. with paid parking during all other hours for that 45 feet. For the existing curb use behind it, which is a taxi stand right now, that becomes a passenger loading and unloading zone.
And what's the time limit in that passenger
That's
loading?
30 minutes. That'll be 30 minutes.
It's all up to 30 minutes because, again, it's shared space. So typically, we give in a passenger loading and unloading zone, we typically right now make sure that they are unloading and loading. If they're just sitting there, they're going to be told to move on or they're going to be given a ticket, just as an FYI, because you're not meant to stay in any unloading zone except for the need of that loading and unloading. So if a passenger does pull up, like let's say it's an Uber that does pull up and they're letting someone out, the expectation is that they would move on. But we either have to set the time for them or we set the time for the buses, and we felt the 30 minutes was better set for the buses, but they're well aware because it's very clear in our docs that you literally have to be loading and unloading. So it doesn't, even though it says up to 30 minutes, they all know they only have the amount of time it takes to load and unload an individual or individuals in and out of their vehicle or their luggage.
But is the 30-minute loading area, is that big enough for a bus?
Yes, it is big enough for a bus. They're doing it today. We're just going to be regulating it, and we're going to be signing it. The buses are out there today actually loading and unloading at the Omni Hotel as guests, for the restaurants, for whatever their visit is in the area.
And we don't think this is going to cause an issue with people saying that we're loading and unloading for 30 minutes?
Well, we'll find out. I mean, we got to start testing this. This is part of, again, Connect Downtown. And again, this is a new concept. In the past, we always designated one use for this space, and now we're moving to where we're sharing the space. So this will be our first run to see what we need to do and how we can do it better. But we do feel like this will be a great test zone for us to make sure that Connect Downtown is being utilized in that capacity.
Isn't our Connect Downtown plan to have a pickup and drop-off zone on Demonbreun, not on?
It has many different places planned throughout the downtown area for drop-off and pickup. But most of Connect Downtown actually looks at during the morning and the afternoon, our areas on the curb are used for loading and unloading. The bulk of our business in the morning is just that. Service vehicles coming to service the establishments, goods and services being delivered. So it acts in that capacity. There's also is a need for passenger loading and unloading during, but it's very limited. So they can use it, but they all know they can't stay. And so all of our Uber and Lyft, our taxis, they all know they cannot sit in a passenger, even if it's not labeled passenger, if it's labeled as a loading and unloading zone, they can use it. But in the evening, when we're not having deliveries, all of those zone areas will become just that, passenger loading and loading. So it's a different concept than what most folks are used for, because right now we designate every single use of the curb for one specific thing. And we're moving into the world of where that space is now going to be shared by multiple uses. And so this is going to be our first test of it, and I'm looking forward to it.
I would offer a little bit of advice on the future for these. If we could get an aerial maybe detailing the separation between
Okay.
the two,
Yes, sir.
highlighting what delineates the bus parking only and then the 30-minute pedestrian parking. I think it's a little fuzzy, and to be able to truly understand, one, where the taxi stand is, this visual just kind of sees the whole strip or the whole side right there. But being able to share the curb, I think is great. And then the bus parking, when the next time we have that visual, we can clearly see that for 2 hours during the day, it would be for bus parking that needs to come and stay for a group or whatnot. And then the taxi area is being changed to a passenger loading and unloading, essentially. That's already been designated.
Connect Downtown eliminates all taxi locations, and they're all called passenger loading, because that in essence is what they're providing. So we're no longer going to have any in the future as we move out Connect Downtown. We will no longer have taxi unloading, loading stands. We will have mainly passenger loading zones, or just loading, unloading zones, and they'll have specific at different times they'll warrant different uses.
Okay.
Let me say it that way.
And then to Commissioner's point, could we just get a brief update maybe in the January meeting of how this is working out, given that we're going to be rolling out more of these in the future?
Yes, we would love to do that. Thank you.
Would that help work for you?
Thank you.
Just
Yes,
hey, this is what we've done, this is what we learned.
Yes.
What's great was not great.
Actually, Brent is here, so Brent's our project manager over Connect Downtown, so we'll have him actually give you an update of where we are, because we're in the process right now of installing the scooter corrals and bike corrals, so we'll probably have a really good update to share with y'all in January. So thank you for that opportunity, sir. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? If not, do we have a motion on this item?
Move to approve.
We have a second? Second. It's been first and second. Any questions on the motion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It is passed. We'll move to item 5.4, authorization for new residential permit parking at 477 Chestnut Street, requested by resident staff. Would you like to speak to this item? Please state your name for the record and turn on that microphone.
Good afternoon. My name is Emmanuel Matias with NDOT. Yes, so this is a request for new RPP parking for a solitary residential property that remains on the corner of Chestnut and Humphreys. This area is undergoing a heavy development, and parking has become an issue. This property has no driveway or any available off-street parking, so we're requesting on the Humphreys side to be able to, for the residents to park their vehicles as it would be signed for an RPP for this sole residency.
Is that all?
That's all.
Any questions? Commissioner?
Yeah, so my question on this one is, since this is a non-conforming structure, how are we supposed to consider that compared to other residential properties? Do we take that into account at all?
What do you mean?
I know this is somebody's home.
Yeah.
This is at the edge of my neighborhood. So I've definitely walked past here. But it is zoned industrial. So it is a different type of zoning than usual. And so I guess this was built without parking in the past, but it wouldn't.
Correct.
I would direct your question to the codes department as far as non-conforming use or whatever the zoning is. In this case, we have a resident of this property who has applied and has a councilman's support for RPP for their frontage along Humphrey Street.
If I may, Chair. So there are scenarios throughout Davidson County where folks had depended on street parking. And yes, it may be non-conforming, but that doesn't mean they have to bring their property up to today's code in order to be conforming. They sort of get almost like grandfathered in. But in this particular case, this particular house, he did not have a driveway. He is used to always using the on-street parking. Because of the growth and the development that is happening in the area, it has become quite challenging for him to even find parking. The reason why we did not consider Chestnut Street is because we're in the process of actually going through communication and engagement with the community for a bike lanes to go on Chestnut Street. So if we were to put him there, we'd have to take him off. So that's why he's being led to Humphrey. But even though this is maybe non-conforming to today's, it is a home, it is someone's residence, he's lived there for a long time, and he's just always parked on the street, but this whole area is a revitalization, I want to say. And we are having challenges with parking all over this area. We've been working very closely with the businesses on it, but this is a legit request, and it's not the first time we've ever provided this type of parking.
And I asked this question the last time too of, this would be residential parking on Humphrey Street.
Correct.
Would we be approving it for any other of the residential uses that are on Humphrey Street?
If someone has a residential parking pass, it's available to all of them. This gentleman doesn't get this by himself, but right now he's the only one that's that has a residential parking pass. He's the only one that's come forth because of the challenges he's having. But if we were to go and do the entire street, it's available. So if someone else has a residential parking pass, then they would, for that street or in that area, they would be able to park there as well. Yes, sir.
The majority of the parking issues that are on that street are due to there's an apartment complex at the bottom of the street that has reduced parking, and so they park on the street.
So if there is a request, we can certainly go in and do the analysis that we do for residential parking. There is a program that the community can go through for consideration for the whole street.
Would they be eligible to also get permits since they are on the same street?
Yes, sir.
And so did we explain that to the person who submitted, that if you do that, then there might be a chance that 90 other people are going to request the $10 permit to go there?
It's very possible. It's first come, first served. That was made clear.
One other question. How many, singular parking spots do we have in the program?
For this,
The residential parking program?
as
How
a
many?
whole, throughout
the
throughout the county, I don't know the total number of spaces.
I
Do
don't
you?
know the total number of spaces, unfortunately, either.
We could give
We
you a
have the-
breakdown. We do have it.
We have the breakdown, but not here on hand.
And I wouldn't say it's parking spaces because we don't necessarily go through and mark the right of way. And sometimes you could, the standard practice is 22 feet in length, but a Fiat is kind of small and so is a Volkswagen Bug. So sometimes you can fit two of those in 22 feet. So we don't go and mark the spaces. We kind of leave it open. And that's typically what you'll find in a residential area throughout the country, is that you kind of leave it up. The only thing we will mark is we want it set back from the intersection and the stop signs, and also when you're moving away from it, from the safety aspect. So that's the one thing we are really looking closely at, is making sure that the intersection and its sight viewing stays safe.
We can provide the commission with a listing of streets that have approved RPP parking.
Yes.
But we don't have the number of spaces, because the number of spaces on a street are reduced by the presence of driveways, of fire hydrants, and other things that render it non-parkable.
And also the size of cars.
Yeah, I totally get size of cars, size of space that's available. I definitely know of at least one other example where it is just like residential parking permit, and it's pretty clearly that the commission set it up to be a singular person's residential permit. And I think that does create a lot of issues when there are other uses on the street, trying to figure that out. I would request maybe that we could potentially defer this 1 month and then maybe get a little bit more data to kind of see if there are some of these more spot. It almost feels like it's a spot situation.
It is. It's only one space that we're going to actually be signing for parking, for residential parking. Because if I do more than that, then that limits the ability for everybody else to use the other parking.
Yeah.
So we want to.
But this family has more than one car, too.
He does not. I mean, I'm only going to give one space, then that's it, because that would be my recommendation to make to this board is one space. The comment was offered to consider figuring out how to create a driveway that would connect his property. And so that's quite a bit that they would have to go through, but that was a recommendation. And that's requiring to hire an architect and engineer and all of that to do. So if he wants more than one, he's going to have to figure it out on his private property. I think one is more than generous, understanding the challenges of the area, which we're very familiar with. But we're only signing one space for residential parking. And if somebody comes in and they meet the requirements of the residential parking permit program, then they are more than welcome to buy a permit and they can duke it out.
Is there a minimum in the RPP regulation? Or is that the wrong word?
A minimum of what?
Parking spaces you can allocate?
No, we typically do it by one, we typically will look at an entire street versus one resident. But again, this resident has been living in this house for a significant amount of time and has always used on-street parking. Has never had any parking available on their property.
I'm concerned about enforcement.
So we are in this area pretty significantly right now because of all the construction that's going on. And we're working with many of the businesses. We also have valet in the area, so we're already over in that area doing some enforcement.
Okay.
So it would be one signed spot, basically.
Yes, sir.
But the potential to have, you would have multiple permits within the property itself.
If it meets the qualification of this particular residential parking permit.
Yeah, I would be interested just to see if there's other examples of this and some of the reasoning why, and just to make sure it all aligns.
Again,
That's okay.
this does happen throughout the United States and other cities, and it's typically because the individuals have always used on-street for their parking, and the area is starting to change dramatically around them that the parking becomes challenging. So it's not that we are saying you get it. This can always change as we giveth. It can also be taken away. This is a benefit. But the challenge is this area has dramatically grown. If we continue to see parking become a challenge, it probably will need to have a residential parking program looked at for the entire street. But in this particular case, it was looked at for just this house.
Yeah, and that would be a question that I have is, we're considering a homeowner's interest over renters down the street. And I would like to kind of see if we've done that in the past and kind of, if we're going to look at just a spot, we should maybe think about the whole street now and try to see if we can potentially do some sort of.
Well, we would expect someone to come forward and ask us to do it, and we have not had anyone come forward and ask us to look. We do not go out and look and say, oh, this street needs to be a residential parking permit. Personally, I do not really, when you are in a commercial area as well as a residential area, and you start defining your streets as a residential parking, you're eliminating the ability for that to also be used for commercial space, even though it may be sitting empty. So we just actually do not recommend it. But in this particular case, this gentleman has always depended on on-street parking, and the area around him has changed pretty dramatically that he now is not able sometimes to even find the ability to parking. And because we're moving forward with bike lanes on Chestnut Street, we do not want to continue to allow for parking on that street.
So, if I may, on the residential parking permit process, any property owner can submit for on-street parking for their property only, correct? What's the process of getting to where you're at right now?
Typically not. So when someone submits for a residential parking, there's multiple criteria they have to meet. In this particular case, this gentleman came forward and asked us to meet it. He had to go out and meet those criterias, and he did.
And he met it.
He met all
For
those
this- for his
criteria.
property.
For that one particular
Right.
space on street, it met the criterias of where he couldn't find parking, his garbage wasn't out on the street, multiple things that go into play with the criteria, one of them being approval of your council member. So even the council member understanding that this has been that way of life, but the area around him has changed dramatically, he's met all of those requirements and criterias that it is eligible for the one space and him to get the permit.
So within that criteria, is there anything within that packet or anything that requires you all or him to evaluate surrounding properties and or the parking on that street?
We look at when they come and they ask for it, is one of the criterias is the inability to park. So we are evaluating the ability to park, not necessarily just in front of his home, but on the street. And so many times when we did the criteria check, there was no parking available. So that's what deemed it as eligible, is because a majority of the time, he was never able to even find parking on
For
the
his
streets.
property.
Period. He was not able to find a place to park. Not for his property or anything. If he was visiting a site, whatever, he couldn't find it. Anyone on that can come forward and say, hey, I can never find parking when I'm coming and staying at my apartment. And so therefore, there is a requirement that they would have to hit. Now, necessarily in an apartment complex that has actually new and didn't develop the right number of parking spaces, that would be a really tough one, because the criteria says every single folks should. But again, this gentleman's kind of being, I want to say, grandfathered in, because his place was never built with parking. It was always used for on-street.
If I may remind the commission, the Metro Code has black letter requirements for residential parking permit eligibility. And those criteria include the extent and desire of the resident to have permit parking and to pay for his permit, the proximity of the neighborhood to major parking attractors, including employment centers, retail stores, restaurants, universities, hospitals, and tourist attractions, scarcity of convenient off-street parking for residents, in this case, 0, the extent to which motor vehicles registered to persons residing in the residential area cannot be accommodated by the number of available off-street parking spaces, and again, that's 0, substantial use of the neighborhood curb space by commuters or other non-residents for parking, and that's why we're in this situation. And then the final criteria is traffic noise and other safety problems caused by vehicles cruising for parking. And so those are the criteria that are outlined in the Metro Code, and we deem that this property owner, this resident, meets all of those.
I just want to add a couple of clarifications too. The application can be submitted by an HOA, a community group, or an individual resident who obtains the requisite number of signatures.
Correct.
So signatures on the street.
Correct.
But in this case, is the signature just him?
Correct.
And that's, a resident doesn't have to own on the street to submit for this. They can be a renter. Just because they're a homeowner shouldn't elevate their status. I totally agree that there is a scarcity of parking for this homeowner and resident. But the majority of that scarcity is due to other residents parking on the street. And so I agree we need to think about something of how to accommodate this.
And so therefore, if somebody wanted to come through and actually have us look at the street, they would need to go through the process of requesting for a review of a bigger residential parking permit than what was put before staff.
So then, in your opinion, then the people at the end of the street also couldn't get permits?
Correct. At this time.
I would like to, oh, go ahead.
No, I would like to make a motion that we defer this a month. I think that there's a chance to look at it. I think it should be given the opportunity for other residents on the street to have the opportunity to consider it. I think that makes it a lot harder of a decision. I'd like to know if there are other chances that are there. So, I'll just make a motion to defer this a month and hope that.
Before we do that,
So is there not a requirement on how much parking should be provided when you are building an apartment?
So typically, when they are building an apartment, there is a certain amount of parking that is required.
So.
There's no parking required for an apartment building.
Pardon?
There's no parking required for an apartment building at this time.
So before, I would like to ask legal, this applicant for this residential parking permit sounds like has met all the requirements for him to obtain a parking permit in the right-of-way, irregardless of our concerns about other properties or parking in the area. So in honor of this applicant, what is our exposure and or drawback or pushback from the applicant if this is deferred or rejected? Because what we have in front of us is a residential parking permit at between Humphrey Street and Chestnut for this specific property owner and or resident, correct? Correct. And the criteria has been met for him to obtain that.
There was a community meeting for it? Was it a properly noticed community meeting? Does it have to be noticed?
So, give me a second. So legal, I would just like to ask, like, what does that look like?
So I don't think there's any liability if you defer it because you have to approve it. So if you defer it, that's fine. He'll just have to wait another month. And if you deny it, he would have an appeal process.
Okay. Okay, if we defer it, the information that we're looking for with the deferral is what?
I think we need to, I would like to know how many of these there are, and we don't have them.
What do you mean, how many situations like this?
Situations like this where a single resident is coming forward asking for parking in front of their house. Because this seems like the type of thing, if we approve one, we can't really not approve anybody else who comes with the same type of, you don't have parking on your property, there's a bunch of stuff around you going on. The city is changing a lot. It's gonna happen in a lot more places. You know, I think that there is supposed to be a community meeting before this. The council member being supportive of it is great. That's information that should be provided. That's not the only thing that matters. But that's the type of thing, like, I don't want to get in a rabbit hole of, we're going to have these every single day with people coming forward asking because they have scarcity of parking at their singular house.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of streets that have this.
Is that information?
I think I can speak to the commissioner's question. It is very rare that you have a single property that's asking for residential permit parking. We did have one within the past 2 years over on Fairfax, and it was almost like this. It was actually a resident that was at the end of an existing RPP area, and he wanted to be included in that RPP area. So he petitioned, he provided a petition based on his residential property as well as his neighbors. And so that actually was 2 residential properties that were extended to an existing RPP. That's about as close as we can get, and it's almost on the same scale as this.
We can go back and look and see if we have any additional data of one-offs. We can go and look.
Okay.
I off the top of my head, I can't say.
Yeah, and if we could make sure that we are clearly defining the area that this permit would be for, I think that would help my decision at least of this is specifically only for here. There was a redevelopment plan even for the building that's right behind it, so that would have been more residents that are gonna be there, and so obviously it's gonna take away available spaces, but I mean, if the alley access ends up getting developed, then it becomes hard to say that this isn't for anybody else too in that area. So, yeah, I'd renew my motion to defer a month.
Chair, if I may, before you
Yeah,
proceed,
before-
there is
yeah.
a definition of residential area and residential permit parking areas in the Metro Code that might be helpful for the commissioner. Residential area, in quotes, means a contiguous or nearly contiguous area containing public streets and highways or parts thereof where residents dwell. A residential permit parking area, RPP, means a residential area designated as herein provided where resident motor vehicles displaying a valid permit as described herein shall be exempt from parking time restrictions established pursuant to this article. And that's from section 1242.010. That's where the definitions are. The criteria is set forth in 1242.030. And the application procedures are in 1242.040.
I just also want to
Thank you.
remind the commission that this is an annual permit, so we are constantly reviewing. So as the area does dramatically change, if we have to do a consideration, we have that opportunity on an annual basis, just as we do with valet. Because you're absolutely correct, Commissioner, our community is drastically changing.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
For the third one, can I make a motion to defer a month?
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been first and second. Any questions on the motion or discussion? And just for clarity, the deferral is inclusive of staff providing data on singular RPP opportunities or potential RPP opportunities in the future and a better understanding of this area, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would like them to consider if we're not actively going out and asking other residents on the street, I think that I would like to include the request from our position here that we should do that, and we should consider all residents on the street if we're looking at these types of things. Unless we've done this in the past in multiple areas.
So typically, when a resident puts in, and they're putting in for the street, they're putting in with the petition of everyone that signed it, or at least up to 75%. That's what our rule says. In this case, he's asking for the one space next to his residence, so therefore, he is meeting the 75%. So that's why it wouldn't necessarily be a requirement of going out and surveying the entire street. Now, if we were to look at the whole street, somebody would need to bring that forward to us for consideration instead of the one space. Just wanted to share that out.
I have one thing. So this individual is surrounded by whatever there's an industrial thing next to them. Is there even a neighbor? Where's their nearest neighbor? Where is the nearest person that lives on this street to them? Where?
It's at the bottom of the block.
So someone from the bottom of the block would park. You're just saying.
That's what they do now. I mean, there's about 30 spots at the bottom for off-street, and then there's about 90 or 100 units that are there. So there is some amount of parking that kind of spreads out along that street.
Where does this street fit in our paid parking or a parking meter?
Well, we just had a conversation with a lot of the business folks within this area, and right now they're not favorable to paid parking. As the commissioner had mentioned, there's a lot of development going on in this area, so this area is a bit on the challenge side for that as well. So we're working very closely with the neighbors as well as with the businesses on making sure we can keep as much parking spaces open and available. We did also have the conversation with them about time limits, and they're brewing over that right now, and will get back to us about a consideration of time limit for parking to go in. And so right now, there's no set time, there's no set pay, there's nothing. So that's why no one other than this one gentleman, because that's his home, he's surrounded by mainly industrial sites around him. But he is still being challenged with parking because the area itself is starting to evolve.
There's also a very good burger place right there. Just putting that down.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
Gabby's is,
Yes,
is a
okay.
big,
That is a really good burger place.
and it's hard to find parking to go there right now.
That's because it's a really good burger place.
Right. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's been deferred for 1 month.
We will bring it back to you.
Thank you. Item 7.0, unfinished business. 7.1, approval of expanded meeting parking rate structure requested by NDOT. Just a refresher, we did have a presentation last month. I believe there were a few comments and questions at that meeting, and the goal for today's meeting is to vote on what is being presented. So, Emmy.
Correct. Should we do a refresher for what we presented? Refresher? Okay, so what you have in front of you is an extended pricing model for technically a phase two rollout of the parking program. What this program does is threefold in categories of making sure that parkers can now extend of 2 or 3 hours, which was the limit. This would allow them to park up until 10 hours. So that's one of the biggest changes. The second change would be that there would be designated economy parking zones in areas that we assigned, and those would have economy prices as opposed to the ones that we are looking to get approved today. So they would separate the zones from, between the district themselves, and then also have economy zones for those areas that are underutilized. And then, of course, we would have the central parking district and the non-central parking district remain the same, with enforceable of 24/7 being in the downtown area, and then 6 a.m. to midnight being outside of downtown, which is currently also the case. This proposed implementation would obviously help with the multiple things, the quality of life, the parking, search for parking times. It will allow for people to really decide if they have a short-term or long-term need for parking. And most importantly, one of the other changes that this brings is that it allows for half-an-hour increments of payment, which also reduces the end-user experience in that they are able to park for cheaper now if they want to stay for, let's say, half an hour only and pick up their food or something like that, instead of the previous hourly increments that were implemented or currently are in place. So the rates that we're looking to approve today would be, as you can see on the right-hand side of this template, the new rate schedule for non-CPD would be 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. as mentioned, and the hour 1 through hour 10 are displayed here. $2 for the first hour, again with the ability to pay with half-an-hour increments, which would make the first hour $1, which is cheaper in both non-CBD and CPD areas. And then, of course, the designated economy parking zone to that as well. So the economy zones for the underutilized areas, we mentioned that these would be the ones that we would start with. Obviously, this would be changing. Currently, we've seen little to no traffic at these areas, and really the push behind the economy zones would be so that people might have a chance or option to park a little further away from their final destination, but walk or use public transport in the future to get to their final destination. So that would make so the parking is cheaper, although it includes a bit of a walking or public transportation use, which again brings just more choices about the parking situation and the preferences of those who need to park within downtown or outside of downtown. We also, if you could go back for a second, we also wanted to present the draft of what the parking sign would look like, the new updated signs. As you can see, the rates will be displayed on the bottom. It's a bit of a redesign to where it kind of stands out a little more than it used to. The colors are more vibrant. And in that red zone that you see on the bottom, we would also introduce the names of the zones or the zones themselves. So it would say Zone 1, Zone 2, and Zone 3. That way it's very easy and convenient for everybody to understand what zone they are in and whether payment is required or whether payment is being extended.
Yeah,
I'm
my
happy
only
to answer any
comment-
questions.
My only comment is for the signs. Is there any discussion on displaying the domain, the actual, whatever the website is, to go pay?
So once you place the QR code, it is available to you.
The only reason I bring that up is just QR codes are just insecure.
Yep.
Anyone can kind of come up and put a sticker on it or on top of it.
Understand. I mean, we could, we've gone through the internal discussions about this. We have three options to pay. One of them is the meter, right, on site. The second one is scanning the QR code, which does take you to the website. And the third option is texting a number to a designated number. So you would have, every zone would have its own sequence that you would text to a text message number, basically.
Okay,
And they would tell you exactly, they would take you to the website to pay.
Yeah.
But specifically to have the website displayed, I don't know if you want to go that route because we already have those other two. And it's too long. We want to make sure that it's, it's kind of confined to where it's MUTCD compliant and it looks professional.
I would reiterate that point too, to potentially think of different ways to display it. I was in Austin this weekend and they have, similar things going on.
Mm-hmm.
Their signs have a QR code, but it's crossed out and it's very specific that says this is only to be used for informational purposes only and go text or go to the website to pay.
Appreciate it.
So that way there is a specific place to go instead
Okay.
of.
So we still have time for the signage. This is just a kind of a mock-up so that you can see what it looks like. And we do appreciate your feedback. We'll definitely take that under advisement. Today, we wanted to really get the pricing models approved so that we can go ahead and start working on, starting to come up with the schedule and start the community engagement and social engagement so that people know that it's coming and slowly phase it in.
The question I have is there a way to make it so that the person that works downtown that's going to use this area is able to do so? Because I'm a firm believer that people will go to where there's cheaper parking. And my understanding with this designated economy parking zone was that part of the reason for doing that was to make it so that people that work downtown would be able to park in an area that was a little bit less expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to make it so that those people, I don't know if a permit or what, some way to make it so that those people will be able to park there and get that rate and other people that don't have it would have to pay?
I understand your question, and it's first come, first serve. So if they are able to get there within those times when the space is available, yes. Outside of that, we will advise them to look into the parking options to where the monthly payment or monthly card would actually might be cheaper than parking daily wherever they want to park downtown. Some of the rates are starting from $150 to $180 a month. And if you do the math, it always comes out a little cheaper than parking on the curb every day. So if that would be an option that I would suggest for public to look into monthly passes.
NDOT offers monthly passes?
We have not for the public, not on the street.
NDOT does have the downtown residents parking program. Is that still in effect?
The RPP for downtown, it's technically still active, but we are revamping it right now.
And then there's also, what about the green vehicle permit program.
Also being revamped.
So we should expect to see those.
So to the RPP part, because of Downtown Connect, Connect Downtown, I don't foresee any future approvals or any approvals at the time being if they contradict with the Connect Downtown initiative. So that's, case by case. And as far as the green permit, I don't really have an answer for you. We know that we are, with the legal team, looking into options.
Chair, just to answer your question, Commissioner, we would provide you with a draft of any proposed legislation for your recommendation to council on that point.
To Commissioner Gibbs' point about designated economy parking, is there a way that we're sharing the message to workers and or individuals downtown so that they know where the designated economy parking is? How are we sharing that?
Great question. So we have a social media team that is going to be able to, in advance, communicate anything that we would tend to do, and we will have, I believe, 2 weeks before the signs go out, we would have an outburst of social communication so that everybody's aware that it's coming.
Go ahead.
Maybe when we do make a motion, we could add some language. I know the recommendation number 2 is authorization for NDOT to establish or de-establish the economy zones. Maybe it'd be a nice thing to get a monthly report if any of those change.
Of course.
That way it's another place to kind of bring it up and talk about it.
Great point. Thank you. Yeah, we'll do that. I think that's a great idea.
I think sharing with the Downtown Partnership, NAOP, some of our other partnering organizations would be beneficial as well.
They're involved.
Great. Just letting them know that they can spread the message on where some of this designated economy parking is.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for your advice.
Any other questions, comments? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a second?
Second.
We'll add your piece in the discussion. Go ahead.
We can add it in during discussion.
Yeah. It's been motioned and second. Any discussion? So we want to add to the motion that we want a report on the designated economy zones bi-monthly or how often?
As they appear, would that be, because there might not be anything happening for a certain amount of time.
Let's put a frequency on it just so it's.
Okay.
If we could, might I suggest, Diana Alarcon, that we bring back a report quarterly. We can give you a report on how they're performing. So if we're having like some success where it is being utilized, we can give you an idea of what the utilization is. And if it's not, we'll provide that. And if it is being successful and being utilized, that's when we'd want to maybe consider decommissioning, but that, after some point. So, but I think if we do it quarterly, that would probably be, give us sufficient time to evaluate and do all of that, as well as bring that back to sheriff for any changes we want to do.
So make it noted that we would like that report quarterly.
Consider it done, sir.
Okay. Good. Any other comments or discussions? All in favor? Oh, sorry.
On the QR code, it was a valid point that someone could put something over the existing QR code, going to the text message. It sounds like it's a little bit more secure. Are there any other options that could be done to make it so that a person trying to do the right thing calls themselves paying, and they're paying the right people?
I mean, I'm not sure if I understand the question correctly, but we have implemented within our procedures a check of every time that we would, let's say, service a machine, we would go and make sure, our technician would make sure there's no sticker that would be placed over the existing QR code. So we have things in place to ensure that it doesn't happen. But outside of text message and the QR code scanning and the website itself and the machines, I mean, that's already 4 options. So I don't know.
It's sad to hear that that's happened in other cities. We've been very fortunate, knock on wood, that it hasn't happened in our city. And so we do have a regular, after we were made aware that some other cities were having challenges with it, we went out and we did a regular check of all of them, and now we've just included that in our regular maintenance program of checking the meters. One of the nice things about moving to this signage is the color coded, so that it has multiple colors. So typically they're going to make something that's not going to be anywhere close, so it'll be able to really spot out. So that was one of the reasons we went into a little bit further with the design, was just to make it stick out a little bit more. But we haven't had that issue here, but I know of some of our colleagues elsewhere in other cities have had that issue. So we are very cognizant of it and paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be nice? I know if you go to like the parking in Nashville page that we have, there's a big button for pay for parking ticket. So maybe if we could also just have a link to go into the parking system to pay for your spot, that might be another option.
So reserved parking throws you into a whole nother playing field. It's something that we want to do in the future. We're just not able to do that at this moment. So
I don't want to, it doesn't have to be reserved, but like you can just open up your app.
So it's, again, it's a whole nother ball of, it's a whole nother game that we have to, in order to do that. But we're having great success with the QR code right now with the pay by text. I mean, I was actually looking at September's report that we just got in, and we have less than 3% that's being paid in cash. Everything else is done through the QR code, through the text, or actually the meter. I think the meter's carrying, like, a lot of folks are going and paying for it at the meter. I think it's at like 17%, and the rest is coming in through the QR code or text. So we're really having great success with the program as it is right now. Haven't really gotten that many complaints coming back in, but the payment, your parking ticket is done to the courts. It's not done to us. So there's a little bit of organization and collaboration that has to happen to have two different systems talk to each other. So we're working on all of that, but we're just not there yet. So,
in your update, we can, you said you're a few weeks out from signage, or the timeline of getting the signage installed?
So this would be rolled out in phases. So we would go through districts. So every district would take a bit of time. What I was referring to earlier was that we would give some notice to the public via social media that the signage is about to go out.
So in this quarterly report, if we could just get an update on the specifics that you just mentioned, that would be great.
Yeah, we can also put together a schedule of when and how we're going to roll it out.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It has, item 7.1 has passed. Okay, item 7.2, authorization to reduce posted speed limits on Hermitage Avenue, Lebanon Pike from Korean Veterans Boulevard to the Wilson County line, requested by NDOT. One modification to this, well, staff, I'll let you speak to the modification as you're providing your recommendation.
NDOT would like to amend its recommendation to include the segments of Hermitage and Lebanon Pike from Korean Veterans Boulevard to Donaldson Pike, and request a vote on approval for that today. And then we would like to defer the segment of Lebanon Pike from Donaldson Pike to Wilson County line to the December meeting.
So just for clarification, Commissioners, on page 11, we will do Lebanon Pike from Donaldson and Wilson County line at a later meeting. This vote is for Korean veterans to Donaldson. Did I repeat that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay. If you could continue.
Thank you, Chair. I think the Commission is aware that NDOT has engaged in quite extensive stakeholder engagement, and we've covered most of the areas that, especially those that are closer to downtown, and that's why we're requesting approval today for the slower speeds and the more urbanized areas. Mr. Freeze? All right. And we would like to have some additional time at the, to December to look at the kind of the phase 2 of this request to reduce the speed limit on Lebanon Pike. We've done some speed studies for this corridor, and we've met with some council members, and at this time, we'd like your vote to approve lowering the posted speed limits from Korean Veterans Boulevard to Donaldson Pike.
State your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Brad Freeze. I work for the, excuse me. Oh, my name is Brad Freeze. I work for the Nashville Department of Transportation. So we have, as Andrew mentioned, we have done extensive outreach in the districts. I myself have actually presented at 3 different council meetings, district council meetings, and have had very, very good support for their speed reduction. So we're very encouraged for what we've heard so far. We are looking to move forward with this first phase, a phased approach, phase 1, and it's going to take us approximately 2 months to do all the signage and replacement. In addition to that, we want to do a larger education rollout where we use variable message boards that will be installing in the field to actually notify people of the change. In addition, working with Metro Nashville PD on enforcement and targeted enforcement along the corridor. But in addition, after it has been in place for a week, we want to have an education period in partnership with Metro Nashville PD, and we've talked about that.
Thank you. Before we have motion, I just want to clarify, in the motion, and I'm asking legal, sorry. We'll need to be sure to specify that we're deferring the last piece in the motion, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then we're asking to defer that piece 2 months
To December,
to December meeting?
to let us finish this first phase.
Okay.
That's correct.
Any questions on this item?
Move to approve.
You got a question?
I mean, I can do it during
Okay.
discussion, I guess, or whenever you want me to do it.
So we need a motion to, and then defer the last one.
I'd like to recommend that we follow up with the NDOT recommendation to reduce the posted speed limits on Hermitage Avenue, Lebanon Pike, from Koreans Boulevard to Donaldson Pike. And I would like to also move to defer the discussion of Lebanon Pike from Donaldson Pike to the Wilson County line until our December meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been first and second. Any questions or comments on the motion?
On that motion, would that preclude us from talking about anything Donaldson Pike to the Wilson County line today? Or can I still talk about that?
Donaldson Pike.
I think you can still talk about it. It's still up for discussion at this point.
Okay.
Yes, feel free to go ahead and
All right.
just
So
voice your comment or
my first
concerns.
question is, I believe we've been told multiple times that the meetings that we were having were informational, the chance to bring it to the community, but the numbers have now changed from our engineering judgment that we were very adamantly talking about the last few times. So why did that change?
So if you're referring to the NCHRP study recommendations, I believe that's what you're referring to.
Well,
If you're looking at figure 7.72, if you're looking at these limitations, okay. These are, okay, so the NCHRP 966 tool report, and these were draft proposed speed limit recommendations. We take these and we look at them. We can't look at it singularly in these different chopped up spaces. We have to look at it as a holistic corridor, and we don't want to have sections where we're having, drops for a mile and then going back up and down and things like that. So we have to consider that when we're adjusting the speed limit.
So the proposed speed limit that we've been reviewing before this, none of the proposed speed limits were 45 miles an hour. Now, today, we are looking at, from Spence Lane to Bradley Parkway, 45 miles an hour. We're raising the speed limit in some places.
That would be consistent with the corridor? Yeah, that would be in consistency with the sections, other sections in the corridor. I mean, we're looking at it holistically, so operationally, it makes the most sense in the corridor.
So, okay. We're looking at this 2 phases too, right?
That is correct.
And so now in this first phase, which from Division Zero studies, previous discussions on this, is not as dangerous as the second phase. So in the first phase, you are going to ask us to raise the speed limit. And then we'll get to the dangerous part where people die. And we'll do that in December.
The dangerous, what your question is, the dangerous part?
No, my question is, wow.
Is that a question
this
or is that
really
just a
what we're
comment when you
you're
said
asking
the
us to
dangerous
raise
part?
the speed limit
Okay.
in the less concerned area. We've been talking about this for months now.
Right. We are, what you see here is what was drafted as far as our proposal. That's actually, after we
Within the
reviewed
last
it.
month.
Do what now?
This has changed within the last month.
Well, this is what we've come before you today with our recommendation.
Which section is raising that we're speaking to?
Spence Lane to Briley Parkway, 45 from 40 to 45 miles an hour. So there are sections of it that are 45 already.
Right.
If you go look at the previous thing that we've looked at, none of the proposed speed limits that we were going to do were 45. So this proposal today is asking us to raise the speed limit. And this isn't even, and then not even talk about the high injury area.
So do we have,
And this is all because we went out and had these meetings.
so KVB to Lebanon, what segments do those include? Do we have that? So KVB, just follow me first. So if we go to the, yes, this right here. So KVB to Lebanon Pike is segments 1 through what?
What we were, I'm sorry, Chairman, go ahead.
On the segment,
Yes.
segment 1, Korean Veterans Boulevard to Lebanon Pike. It's segments 1 through what?
It's about segments 1 through 4. The map that you have there kind of goes to a railroad crossing, which we don't want to use for the traffic schedule. We don't want to say the speed limit goes to a railroad crossing. Instead, we would say 700 feet west of a street intersection.
Gotcha.
And for clarity purposes, I say in the staff analysis report, from Hermitage Avenue to Spence Lane, Lebanon Pike, from Hermitage Avenue to Spence Lane, or from Spence Lane to Briley Parkway.
Gotcha. So then the Hermitage Avenue to Spence Lane would be segments 5 through what?
1 through 5, okay, from KVB to Spence Lane is 1 through 5. And then to Lightning Towning Driveway. That's section 1 through 5. What we're asking for is to go all the way to Donaldson Pike, which is ending at section 8.
So what you're asking for on page 11 is for sections 1 through 8, correct?
Correct. If you go
Okay.
to in the item in the agenda, that's what we were requesting.
Right.
Correct.
So what you're asking for in item 11, on item 7.2, if you're looking on the map on the screen to the right, is segments 1 through 8, correct?
That's correct.
So what the commissioner is asking, from Spence to Briley, we raised the speed limit in that section. What your response is, when you look at it from a holistic standpoint from 1 through 8,
That's correct. We don't want to have,
and I'm just recapping and
yes, go ahead. I'm
getting
sorry.
everybody on the same page here, that you're increasing or decreasing the speed limit incrementally with respect to Mr. Smith's point of west of an intersection, not at a railroad, what have you, or whatnot. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So what was the reasoning to go to 45. You go from 25 to 35 to 45, back down to 35. At that segment, why do we go up and then back down?
You're talking about section 8 here when you're looking at the table on 7.2?
I'm just saying from Hermitage to Donaldson, we went from 35 to 45 to 35. That has to do something with an intersection or railroad.
When you enter into that, it is a more dense urban area. The
More what?
density, there's more businesses there. There's
Gotcha.
more business access points there.
Gotcha.
So you have more driveway input, more walkable locations in that area, so more pedestrian volumes.
From Spence to Briley?
What I'm saying is, when you get at section 8,
Okay.
Cottage Lane to Donaldson Pike, to Donaldson Pike, down there, that section,
Okay. So you're saying there's more businesses in that area,
that is correct.
more flow of traffic, higher, so.
We really pick up, yes, so if you look at from Briley Parkway to Donaldson Pike, we're dropping it from 40 to 35 miles an hour.
Right. So then, Commissioner Kornatek, your concern is, we've been talking for months on this, this thing on 7.2, right? Where we're reducing speed limits in areas, right? And then we come back and, we go down, then we go up, and we come back down
No, they're asking us to raise the speed limit
in this section.
in this section.
Is there just an error on page 11?
No, so segment 7.
On page
On page 13?
On page
7.2.
12 or 13, whichever one you want to look at, right?
You're looking at the last column there on the right, correct?
Yes, and I'm looking at our nice little map that we've been staring at for months. So when you get off of Briley Parkway and you go towards Spence Lane, segment 7 was, the posted speed limit's 45 miles an hour now, or 40. There are sections of it that are 40 now. So you're asking us to raise the speed limit,
You're saying segment 7?
segment 7.
No.
It's
We're going
45 going to 40.
Where is it going to 40?
On the last
Far
one.
right.
Okay, so is 11 a typo?
11 is a typo.
I think
Page
11's a
11 is
typo. 11 should be 40.
11 is a typo.
So you go from 35, and then from Spence to Briley
the
is
chart.
40, correct?
Correct.
And then from
There was
Briley,
a typo in the original chart that was put out, actually.
from Briley to Donaldson is 35.
That's
So now, back to your point there on the segment sheet, segment number 7, where it says speed limit, it says 45/40. Where is it 40 from Mill Creek Bridge to Cottage Lane, or is that a typo?
It's a very short segment in there. I don't know if we can pull it up or not.
So now we're not looking, it's no longer page 13 or 12, that's what we're doing. Right? Now we're just looking at the recommendation piece.
Sorry, say that one more time.
So 12 and 13 are just,
Informational.
this is just information.
If
The
you're
previous
looking
proposal-
if you're looking at the recommendation on the agenda, 7.2, that should be 40 instead of 45. It is a typo. I apologize for that.
I apologize, that is my typographical error.
I need to withdraw my motion so we can.
Yep.
Is that acceptable?
Yes,
We're going to start over.
yes, and I think if you could make clear for the public
Okay,
where the typo is
yep. So,
and what the speed limit proposal is.
so
that
do I
would be
need to make a
helpful.
motion on the withdrawal first, right?
Yes, please.
So, make a motion to withdraw your vote.
And I can read that through.
Okay.
I move to withdraw my motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any nays? Motion withdrawn. Now, the clarification that we are looking at here, and I'm going to read through it and just let me know if I'm right or wrong. So, the recommendation is authorization to reduce posted speed limits on Hermitage Avenue, Lebanon Pike from Korean Veterans Boulevard to the Wilson County line. Hermitage Avenue from KVB to Lebanon Pike you're going to 25 miles per hour.
That is correct.
Lebanon Pike from Hermitage to Spence Lane, you're going to 35 miles per hour.
That is correct.
Lebanon Pike from Spence Lane to Briley Parkway, you're going to 40 miles per hour.
That is correct.
From Lebanon Pike from Briley Parkway to Donaldson, you're going to 35 miles per hour.
That is correct. That is in downtown Donaldson.
Right. Now, Lebanon Pike from Donaldson Pike to Wilson County line, we're deferring 2 months for discussion and clarification. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, before we do any motions, Commissioner Corrington, does this relieve our concern about speed limits going up or any concerns around what we're changing them to? To Mr. Freeze's point, what was brought up on page 12 and 13 as we were having discussions over the last 2 to 3 months is looking at this based on the existing speed limits on the streets. Now that we have a holistic analysis and understanding, this is what you're proposing based on the requirements of railroads, intersections, businesses, things that are happening up and down there to get a comprehensive, fluid speed limit change based on the conditions of the street.
That is correct. Based on the context of the street in the holistic look at the whole corridor. That is correct.
And we went up to 40 in that section because it's more of a business district, and it allows for more traffic flow at a pace that supports the area.
It's actually it's less of that area from Spence to Briley Parkway, where we're going to 40, is actually less dense. It's more rural in nature, section, more of a higher. It is in the context of where that would be.
Okay. Any questions?
So we're going, it's just this last line that we're trying to defer, Donaldson Pike to Wilson County line?
That is
the
correct.
last line, yes. We're deferring that one 2 months to the December meeting. And when we come back in December, we're looking for a vote or a presentation.
We're looking for a vote.
Will we have any sort of information?
You'll have an update prepared for you for where we're at with the previous phase one approach. You'll have an update of the phase one approach and our education efforts and how that is progressing. But yes, and then we will come to you for a vote for the last section.
So next month, you'll update us on the outreach and the education effort for the Donaldson and Wilson County line.
We can update you next month as far as that additional outreach, yes.
Okay. Because my
I
understanding is we're voting
I want to be clear, sorry, Chair. I want to be clear, instead of saying outreach, I'd rather use the term education. Because we're educating the public on what we're doing.
But when we vote on these first 4, you're going to start to work on
That's correct. We have the work order in the queue and ready to go.
I think it would be appropriate for the Donaldson Pike to Wilson County line, just understanding that we're on track.
Yeah.
For a vote in December in next month's meeting. Commissioner Gibbs, you have a question?
I just want to clarify that the information on page 13 follows the information on page 12 as far as the proposed speed limits.
So this is the earlier
If you go to the
chart.
next slide, please.
If you go to that,
I believe it does.
Andrew, this was the earlier slide that was shared.
The information.
So this segment here was just broken up by where the speed limits changed.
That is correct.
That's correct. That information that you see on page 13 of the report and also page 12, that is multiple studies that were done on the corridor, and you see according to which technique you used in NCHRP 966, or if you looked at spot speeds or NREX, you can get slightly different variabilities in the data presented, and so you're seeing everything tabulated there.
The only thing I'm asking is that for the last column on page 13, where it says proposed speed limits, that information is correct.
That information is correct in the speed study that was done. Those are the speed study recommendations, correct?
And that's what's going to correspond with what's on page 12 as far as the segments.
No, that's what's going to correspond on page 11. with
that's-
the edited typo.
Okay.
But it should match, so segment, if you look at segment 13, 45, 35. That's right, it should match, yes. Any other questions?
Yeah, so most of the high injuries are happening where along this corridor? Just from my education.
the majority of the incidents.
Yes.
So if you can bring that, do you have that presentation?
I can tell you that most of the injuries are happening closer into town where the reversible lane is. So segments 1 through 4.
Segments 1 through 5 are where, if you were looking at those all grouped together, that would be the largest as far as the number, but the volume of incidents that are occurring. There is a section further out, closer to the county, where there is a spike in incidents, and those are reflected in what you see as far as the more density that you have and the more business accesses that we have out there.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So the typo in here too, Spence Lane to Briley is 40. But on 13, Briley is in the middle of 8 and 9? Is that right? Or 9 and 10?
You talked about
Raleigh is located
right here
in
in
between,
segment 8,
it's in segment 8.
Briley is
between Cottage Lane and Donaldson Pike.
Cottage Lane to Donaldson Pike.
That's why I've distilled these segments into Briley, because everybody knows where Briley is, but nobody knows where Cottage Lane is.
So then it's not 40. Past Cottage Lane, it's 35.
What are you asking? You're asking for what our recommendation is?
Past Briley is 35.
That's correct.
But does that 35 start at Cottage Lane, which is on the west side of Briley?
No, sir, we're
Starts at Briley.
recommending to start it at Briley instead
Right.
of Cottage Lane. Cottage Lane is a small side street that's on the north side of Lebanon Pike, right before you get to the Briley interchange.
So they're bringing it west. You're bringing
Using Briley as the demarcation.
right, you're reducing the
instead
speed
of
limit
Cottage
so
Lane.
it's
That's
cleaner.
correct. Again, that's because everybody knows where to find Briley Parkway, but nobody knows where to find Cottage Lane.
So when you're crossing Briley, there'll be signs there that, right. So it's getting slower, westerly, more westerly.
Would it be easier to go off of this table that we're looking at here instead of using the?
Yeah, I think, and I think the table is baseline, what you all looked at to do your
Inform the
analysis.
decisions. That is correct.
Understand what the situation was and the
Yes,
speed
so we-
limits in the area.
That is correct.
When you go out to implement it, you need major intersections and things,
That
a
is
side
correct.
street's not really a more appropriate place for you to, sit and delineate, are they speed, and it starts right here at this.
Yes, sir.
And you don't speak,
The
but I'm
table
just
you see
speculating.
there is taken from the speed studies. We would never implement that into the traffic schedule because, that mentions a lightning towing driveway. We wouldn't use that in the traffic schedule. We would identify the major cross street or so many feet from a cross street.
So when we looked at this last week as a group, our minds were, this was how it was going to be implemented. When we saw this breakout here, it just wasn't understood that it was holistically in that this is how we roll out our signage and our implementation.
That's correct. So what you saw was the direct output from the study that was put together by AECom.
So this breakdown on page 11 accomplishes
That is correct.
the map.
That's our
and
recommendation.
And the graph here, the Excel spreadsheet here, in the implementation way. So I think for clarity, are you confident that now that we fixed the typo, what we're outlining here on page 11 includes and accomplishes what is shown here on this table?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Can a disclaimer be added that if there's any other typos or things that, I think the spreadsheet needs to be accomplished. How y'all implement it is mainly at your discretion as long as these speed limits are attained.
That's
that
right.
we vote on. Does that give the commission more comfort in that we are getting the speed limit reductions that we've looked at over the next few months?
Did we have all of the engagements that were requested at the last meeting?
Can you say that again?
I think you said you were going to do another one with Councilmember Coopin, another one with Councilmember Eastlick, and another one with Huffman, and
That's
then
correct.
maybe one in Gregg's.
Correct. That we have had all those meetings as we discussed the last period.
And now we're going to have more meetings.
We have Councilmember Eastlick here. We're going to have additional meetings with him and reach with his district as well.
That's the only additional meeting we need at this point to get.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
But didn't you just say you had them?
Well, what did you say?
I thought we just said you had them. We didn't have those?
We had the meetings that we discussed previously at the previous TNP meeting. Yes, we hosted the meetings we didn't host. We actually attended meetings that were district meetings with the council members as we discussed in the last TPC.
And what do we expect over the next 2 months that's going to change any decision here for the rest of the segment?
We are not anticipating any decisions being changed based on our recommendation. Our point is to educate the public of what's happening as far as the changes in speeds and the justification behind that.
Right. And I do want to bring up one other point, too, that I think the council member made when he was speaking. And yes, stops have gone down a lot, and I think you can attest to that. I also think that has kind of leveled off, and I assume stops are they're definitely low. I think our enforcement could be moved up. I think people want to see that. I imagine there's resources that are needed for that too, and we should advocate for that as well. But in that time, we've also seen deaths go down too. So using the stops as a indicator of deaths may not be appropriate for us to consider. So I think we should kind of think through it in the right way in that sense. But I don't see any reason why we have to continue to bat this around. Talked about this a lot. You guys are going to be out in the community. You've done an incredible amount of engagement at this point. Have we completed putting up the signs in Dickerson, Mike?
I believe there were some additional signage that we were working to deploy, but I believe we have.
I have seen I drive that route every day. I have seen some signage changes that have been made. I can't say for certain whether the work orders have all been completed for that corridor.
So
It's something in progress.
I will say this, before coming, we're going to change our process, actually, before coming to you as commission with a recommendation. We're going to have the work orders completed. So it's just a matter of getting the work done at that period instead of a gap in between the commission approves it. We'll have the work orders drafted and ready in the queue to submit.
Okay.
Doesn't that have the opportunity to just create duplicate work if we change something?
It does, but I think it benefits us in that we're going to be ready and more prepared to go out and make those changes.
Personally, I would suggest maybe just an update on items. I think there's been a lot of back and forth on some of these speed limit changes. It's not necessarily the concern about when you go and do it. It's just that we approve it and we don't know the timeline of when it's going to be done. So maybe just status update or somewhere that the public can see that we've done something here and when is it going to be finished?
I understand that, but I mean, we do take what we do very seriously in the urgency. When you approve something, we want to move forward and guarantee that it's going to be done timely. So that's what our process will be in the future, working ahead to make sure we have everything in line and ready to go before we bring something for your approval. Because we take that seriously, that we want to deliver things that come out of this commission, especially when it comes to safety items and speed limit reductions.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. So I'm going to ask for a motion, and if you will, please read just the streets and the speed limit, and then that we're deferring the last one for 2 months with an update on where we are in November. So do we have a motion? Go ahead. Turn your mic on.
Try this again. Sorry, I didn't catch appreciate the commissioner bringing it to our attention about the typo on the speed limit, so thank you. I'm recommending that we vote for the authorization to reduce posted speed limits on Hermitage Avenue / Lebanon Pike from Korean Veterans Boulevard to Donaldson Pike. Do I need to read each one?
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Everyone knows the typo.
Also like to move included in the motion is we defer the discussion until our December meeting of the change of speed limit from Lebanon Pike, from Donaldson Pike to the Wilson County line.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been first and second. Any comments or discussion?
I do have one other comment. Even if y'all started tomorrow putting out the signs, the entire corridor wouldn't, like, how long would that take to do the entire corridor?
I'm estimating approximately 2 months. Hopefully we can do that sooner than that. Some of them are actually switching out the actual signs. So some are actually more simple than that, but also we are looking at additional signage. So that takes what's called a locate, where we actually have to find utilities out there and make sure there's no conflicts. So that takes a little bit longer. So it usually takes us, in the last time I did say 90 days. 90 days is an average that we use, but it doesn't really capture, there's a lot of uniqueness individually to the different things. So an average is not always a good way to look at things like that. So what I'm estimating is 2 months to actually when we can get out there and complete this before we can move forward.
And the other question to that is, that happens sequentially? So you're going to start on one end and then just work your way out anyways? Or would that, would it be different segments and just whatever work order gets picked?
We will time it adequately like that. If that's what you're asking, yes, we will work to have it in a good sequence.
If I may, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, you know, the whole point of the speed study and then looking at reducing the speed limit is based on Vision Zero. And Vision Zero is a change in our culture. So it's a lot of effort to move people to think differently about how they use the road. So we sort of missed an opportunity with Dickerson to have a more educational conversation. We had a lot of conversation with those folks that were very engaged, but with the rest of the community that maybe hasn't been engaged. So we do want to take a little bit of a different approach to this with putting some message signs out. We want to have a bigger conversation with our police department on the enforcement side of it also being in education and what that can look like so that we can start moving the entire community over and making this culture shift of getting to zero fatalities on our roadway. So there's a lot more that we're looking to invest on the education level. We are having those meetings with folks, but there's a lot of folks that get in their cars, but they don't necessarily attend the meetings. So how can we approach them and have that educational conversation with them and help them understand that we have speed as our number one lead in deaths when it comes to Vision Zero fatalities on our roadway. So we're going to take advantage of that on this particular transition and focus in on how we have that better conversation with our community as a whole. And that's going to help us also when we move to Donaldson to the Wilson County line about how we continue to have that conversation. So lesson learned from Dickerson we're going to take and we're going to actually explore and look at having that much bigger and in-depth conversation with our community. Getting folks to come to these meetings, they're singing from the same songbook as we all are. It's the other folks we need to start tagging. So this is an opportunity. So we're thinking outside the box of how we get those other folks to come on board and understand why we're doing what we're doing. And it's all about getting to zero fatalities on our roadway. So thank you real quick for indulging me on that.
And a quick question, as the speed limits are being updated, will the traffic control signals be updated to go along with that?
Absolutely. We're working on the offsets. We call them the offsets in the different phases to accommodate the change so we can make sure we have progression through the signals.
Comment. As things evolve, the division given layer consideration with the speed limit change next phase, because used to it being 45 for the last X number of years, all of a sudden you get pulled over, it's 35. Oh goodness, So the traffic division will do an extra layer of consideration as
Try it now. I think it test. Yeah.
I hit it too many times.
okay. Thank you, sir.
I am continuing to be frustrated at this process and how it's being put out. I don't think the phasing is necessary. I think you have the phasing built in, the fact that there is time between us approving it, work orders, the process going out there. I think the police do a very good job of potentially enforcing the rules in a way that's paying attention to how people operate. I think we should make the motion to approve the whole section and just let's go work with the community to understand it. I don't think that we should be pushing so much time here because by the time we get to December, and that's making sure that we all show up in December, then we're going to have, again, that it starts over of potentially an average of 2 more months. So we are going to push this out almost a full year of discussing it for this section of Lebanon Pike. And we're going to get more of these, aren't we? Right? Like, these can't take a year if this is Vision Zero.
I would agree with you as far as the time. We definitely need to be bringing information to you that's accurate, number one, but also be ready to deploy and move forward and do the and do the education to achieve the buy-in. I mean, that's what we've been doing these last few months, is doing the education for the community. We need them to buy into why we are actually doing it, why are we changing the speed. We want to get that compliance. So, and I also agree, we work a lot with Metro PD. I think we have a lot of opportunities to continue to work with Metro PD when it comes to identifying locations where speeding is a challenge in leading to more fatalities. So we have actually pretty good information that we're working back and forth and sharing with Metro Nashville PD when it comes to that. So, but I agree with you, Dale.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? It is passed. Thank you. Item 7.3, authorization to extend the downtown sidewalk vending restriction into the Gulch, including the area bounded by Broadway, 12th Avenue South, Division Street, and 8th Avenue South, requested by Gulch stakeholders and NDOT. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. This has been an item we brought to the commission a couple of months prior with an informative presentation, and then we conducted a mail out to the sidewalk vendors for whom we had mailing addresses. And at this time, we would like to get approval of the extended no vending zone into the Gulch as described. I'd also like to point out, and I didn't include this in the staff analysis, but vendor stands are prohibited within 15 feet of any parking meter. And since last year, the commission has authorized extension of metered parking spaces throughout much of the Gulch. And the areas that we're looking at including here are largely metered. And the desired area, I know that the areas where the vendors are currently operating are within 15 feet of a metered parking space, or if not, they're right on top of a extension into a crosswalk. And the area that I'm talking about, if Corby, can you advance the slide a little bit? See some of the photos? A little bit before that. A little bit before that. Oh, that was it. All right, if you can see some of these slides here, the photos on the right-hand side are the sidewalk in the Gulch in front of Noble Park. That sidewalk measured 10 feet from the right-of-way line to the curb face. And that location, largely where I'm standing, there's a mid-block crosswalk right there, and I'm standing next to metered parking. So there's actually very little legal vending areas in this area.
Thank you. Any questions?
I did send over a few questions after the last meeting. I don't think I saw answers to them, so maybe I'll put them out there again. The first one was in regards to the downtown code, and we just added the East Bank as part of the downtown code. So does that allow for street vending by the stadium?
I'm sorry, I was not able to make out what you asked.
We expanded the downtown code, which is where we're allowed to do street vending, to the east side recently.
Yes, sir. It was recently extended southward, south of Korean Veterans Boulevard. Is that the area you're asking about?
No, that's where the restriction was
That's
added.
right.
I'm asking about, we expanded the downtown code to be on the east side of the river.
So what he's talking about is with the creation of the East Bank entity itself, and with that.
What he's talking about is the zoning.
The zoning, but it's at the same time.
Zoning.
Yeah.
That got moved over to the East Bank.
The East Bank subdistrict.
Yes. Which is downtown code. So do we have street vending in there now?
In the downtown code?
Well, that's what authorizes street vending, is the zoning. And so that's my question is, so now there's street vending in the East Bank that we can do?
They could, but there's really nothing there to go vend to. A lot of it's private property and under construction, so, and they do vend
Understand.
over there when there's game days, just to let you know.
Well, now it's legal.
Huh?
Now it's legal too, right?
They would have to get
There's
a
also
special event
narrow
permit.
sidewalks on the east side too, so there's a lot less.
There's a lot less opportunities on the east side. Majority it's under construction. So yes, it would, and we would need to expand it. Just real quick to let this commission know, there is an authority that's actually been granted by the council. So we're going to let the authority take the lead, and they'll work with their partners, which is the Sports Authority as well as the Titans. So we're just going to let them take the lead on it. But right now, there's very limited places because as was mentioned, there's narrow sidewalks. We have a majority of the area actually closed off and under construction. And as well, there is limited space that would be available for vending. So there is from time to time folks down there vending, selling from water to different items, shirts and kind of goods and stuff like that. So if they are blocking the sidewalk or something like that, the police are actually out there asking them to move and so on and so forth. But I do know that the East Bank Authority, as their foreman put together, they're going to be writing some of their own legislation.
Okay. In the meantime, though, I think it would be nice if there was a way for the public to have a map. We have kind of this map that shows restricted area, potential restricted area if we do this today, but it doesn't include that part. But that is until they supersede us.
So you're talking about 7.3 there, where you're showing the blue line with the downtown zoning cone. You're talking about now that is inaccurate because it does not reflect the zoning has expanded to the east bank of the river.
Yes.
That's what you're talking about. We can change the map to show that. But that's just a reference to the downtown zoning code, so.
Yeah.
I think can we get back to you on that? We need to do a little bit more homework. I'm not sure what all carried over, so let me get back to you. Okay, I want to work with legal and also with planning on that, so we'll get a little bit more of an update. And if there is a concern where we need to bring forth legislation, we'll look at it as well and report that back. But I do know that we do have especially on football games, that's really about the only time that there's opportunities over there for vending. Other than that, there's just really not much opportunity for vending. And we do have limited space because of the amount of construction currently going on, and as well as limitation on sidewalks, because we do have very narrow sidewalks in a lot of the area on the East Bank. But let me just verify a little bit more in detail with planning as well as with the authority and as well as with legal on what would be the best approach to take, and then we'll bring that back to y'all next month.
Okay. Yeah. And within that, I think there's other areas within the code that restrict where people can vend on certain days. I know TPAC is one of them. And so we have it where the street is colored that this would be a wide sidewalk where you could potentially go and it's eligible, but for most of the year, it's not eligible.
Correct.
So I think if there was, an actual GIS map showing people what the eligibility is per the street based on the day or the situations, because that was something that I looked and I was kind of unaware of how many different places already kind of are zoned out based on events going on. So by Bridgestone, on nights that something's going on, you can't vend there anyway, even though we overlaid it on top
Right.
of this.
So I think our biggest challenge is that we do have folks that want to do sidewalk vending, but we just are limited with the amount of opportunity provided because our sidewalk are very slim. And that leads a challenge of where there's enough room to be able to someone do sidewalk vending. And so that's why I think over the years, different rules have been made that have been adopted and added, but looking at it holistically is very challenging. I know one of the things that we continue to do is is to look for a place where they can vend. And the places that we have identified that they can vend, they have no interest in vending there. So there is that there is that challenge, but the reality is we're limited in the amount of sidewalk we have available, and our number one mode of transportation is pedestrian traffic. And so our focus is on safety, and when you start throwing out a vending machine or someone vending, and then people waiting in lines, and it blocks the sidewalk, it pushes people in the streets, that's not safe. So that's some of the biggest challenge we have and we have a lot of limited small sidewalks built around downtown.
And on that point of safety, and thank you for including the pedestrian crash history in the Gulch. I think when I asked it last month too, it was, did we also pull a comparison of I'll call it the central area, central business district, where we've banned this to see if there was change in pedestrian incidents?
We have not. If you're asking us if we have pulled together incident information for the downtown, for outside within the zone, not this extended zone, but in the restricted zone.
In the current restricted zone?
Yeah.
I mean, we're saying, data-wise, that this is supposed to create.
There's insufficient data for that. It's something that has been a recent change, and I don't have anything to really show a before and after.
Isn't that about, it's 2
We
years
can.
worth of?
No, we can get that data. We can get that data for you. We know what crashes occurred before we put the sidewalk vending into place, and we know how many crashes have occurred since then. We just have to evaluate out, so we're gonna need a little bit of time because we've had crashes occur, but they may not, be because of sidewalk vending, especially in that area that's not allowed. But we have had a lot less issue and concerns with being able to, our number one goal has been able to provide for the sidewalks to be available and safe for folks visiting, especially in the downtown core. And some of the biggest challenge is that when it gets overwhelming, the police will shut the street down. And that is something that the vendors have asked us to look at a way that we can reduce the amount of times that the police have had to shut the street down because it affects their business as a whole. And so when we move to sidewalk vending, I can tell you we have not shut the street down as much because we've removed those safety elements or those obstructions in the sidewalk so that pedestrians can move more safely. So I think there's other ways we need to evaluate it. I don't think it's going to be from crashes. I think it's going to be from other opportunities where past practices were done this way because people couldn't get by on the sidewalk, so they pushed out into the roadway, so the police shut the road down. Now that we've eliminated sidewalk vending in the downtown area, we haven't had to shut the street down as much as we did in the past. So I think there's ways for us to evaluate, and we'll work on that.
And then the other thing that I was trying to get to in terms of data on this stuff, kind of ask for how many street vendor permits do we have? How many mobile vendor permits do we have? Parklet and streeteries, and then sidewalk cafes. Do we have any of that info?
Not off the top, but we can get it for you. I do know we have two parklet permits. Three parklet permits. Just had another one come in, just as an FYI. But we can get you the permits on all the other ones that you're asking for.
Yeah. So I wanted to try to get that information and put that out there. We're talking about, and there was a lot of great discussion on it from the public and different groups. But that's the type of thing where if they're worried about competing with businesses, there's a lot of opportunity if you are a business or a building in those areas to potentially do other types of permits as well and expand your business into the right-of-way that we have. And it would be nice to see that data as well.
We had
before we start
25
expanding
active sidewalk vending permits at the time this agenda was prepared.
25?
25.
Okay. But all the other ones we don't necessarily know?
That's the number of active permit vendors that we had. That varies seasonally, though.
But we can get the sidewalk, we can get for you the outside dining, the parklets, I know is 3, and we can get you some of those other permit that we have as well. We just have to pull that from a different system.
So yeah, I just had a question about how do the signs work? Is there enforcement of signs or other obstructions there's scooters all on the sidewalk? Like what else could go before the vendors?
So scooters, so one of the things Connect Downtown recognized is that we do not have good mobility lanes for scooters to be in. So therefore, a lot of people actually use the sidewalk and they're not supposed to be on it. Scooters actually should be ridden in the roadway as bicycles should. So as we move forward and we build out our scooter corrals, then we'll make improvements to our actual loading and unloading and creating that shared space I talked about earlier. Then one of the next steps would actually be, because we would have organized all that, we now have room to do our mobility lanes. And so, yes, there will be enforcement. So if someone is, once we build them all out, we will actually require them to be using it. We can geofence some of it so it works very well in those lanes. And we just, Connect Downtown recognizes all of that, and it's one puzzle piece going down at a time.
Yeah, and then also the signs, like what, I guess what I'm seeing in this picture here is there are a lot of obstructions and there are no vendors.
You're talking about the A-frame sign?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's 3.
Agree.
And they are, maybe 2 feet wide.
I agree with you. Yes.
The A-frame signs are actually on private property.
Quick question, legal. Do we need to wait for Captain Jones to come back to continue discussion for quorum, or what's the procedure there?
I think discussion can continue, but you can't take any action while there's no quorum.
Understood. Please continue.
But you may want to break just so he doesn't miss anything if he's going to vote.
Okay. There's a door. Here he comes.
Nobody look at him when he gets in here.
Yeah, just keep going like we weren't waiting on him. Continue.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess if they're on private property, but, yeah.
So I will tell you, if we find A-frames in the right-of-way, we actually will go to the business and ask them to remove them. They can put it on their private property. And if they do that, then it has to go over to code. We can only enforce in the right-of-way. So we do that.
Any other questions?
Did we look at anything around, I think last time I used the example of the wings and kind of how we enforce
The murals,
the mural, yeah.
standing lines around murals.
That was one of the concerns of there might be an issue of people in the right-of-way, but there's a lot of things that bring people to the right-of-way.
Yeah, then it's the same challenge we're having when they create waiting lines in downtown Broadway to get into a bar. It's the same issue I have, at Milk and Honey and at, Biscuit Love, where they actually create these waiting lines and they go out into the right-of-way. And so all we can do is go to the businesses and ask them to make sure that they keep as much of the sidewalk as available as possible. It's what people get excited about coming to Nashville, but it also creates a safety hazard. So we do constantly try to make sure that the sidewalk, at least something is available. And again, allowing someone to vend just actually adds to the impact of creating an unsafe environment.
And Andrew, you had said before, it's within 15 feet of a meter. It's just a metered space?
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. It's in the existing regulation that says that vendor stands are prohibited within 15 feet of a fire hydrant, fire escape, bus stop, loading zone, parking meter, or any intersection curb radius return.
Which is a lot of the area.
And Midtown.
Yes.
A lot of it where they want to vend. So again, our challenge has been trying to find a place where they can go, and where they can go, they do not want to be.
I mean, bluntly, that kind of seems like their problem if that's the case. I would personally rather leave the space available instead of putting a blanket restriction on it if there's already limited spaces that they can be, but at least give them the option to have the limited spaces. And
the challenge I have is I just do not have enough sidewalk space in the Gulch to support that. So that is our challenge. My number one mode is the pedestrian traffic. And so when we are looking at all of that, we are evaluating and looking at how do we make sure that we're keeping the sidewalk safe and open and available. I mean, the scooter picture in there where you see the scooters. I call the scooter companies and make them come and move scooters all the time because it's blocking the sidewalk and it's not safe. And so, and that's one of the reasons why that's one of the biggest problems Connect Downtown recognized and found as well. That's why we're focusing now on building these scooter corrals so we have a place to put the scooters instead of on the sidewalk. So we keep that sidewalk open and accessible to the general public as a whole. And so, again, giving them, there's a great picture of one. So giving them the opportunity to be out there instead of, a scooter is still creating a narrower space and pushes them into the street. And that's not what we want to do. We want to keep the sidewalks available for the pedestrians. I want to get the mobility lanes built because I want the scooters and the bicyclists to be in the mobility lanes and not on the sidewalk because that's a conflict and it creates a safety issue. So these are all the things we're working on, but these are things that that our community has moved forward as we become a popular destination point. These are the problems that come along with it, and we're trying now to get them resolved.
So if a vendor had a food truck in a parking space on the street, street parking, are they allowed to do that?
No. They have to, first of all, they have to get a permit.
Yeah.
That was something that was passed through here, so we're setting that up, and they have to get permitted, but we do not allow them to use a parking space for vending. Because again, they're gonna vend out onto the sidewalk, and that's gonna create a problem. So we cannot, and that sort of, I think, is why it goes to that 15-foot.
We've actually found problems on private property as well, where they have been vending on private property. However, their queues are obstructing the sidewalk. So even vending on private property, we have worked to make sure that they actually are located on that private property in a space to where they can sustain their own queue.
So we're asking people, isn't there a hot dog stand in one of the bars downtown that does that with that little like corner spot?
And he gets ticketed quite a bit. So he is like on his last leg because they keep saying I'm on private property, but they're queuing. So the police will make his customers leave, and we've asked him to stop because it's very clear that they cannot be holding any business and people waiting to buy hot dogs. So we've actually had them go back into the bar. So if they want to wait for a hot dog, they need to go back into the bar. They cannot be out in the right of way where they're hindering the ability for the amount of people that need to move on the sidewalk to move. So as long as they keep their queuing and they're serving within the private property, they can.
Yeah, I mean, I think being a growing city means dealing with issues like that. You want a lively scene. You don't want to always make people go inside places. I think that's kind of restrictive. What if you're an 18-year-old kid that's down there and you can't get into the bar? What if you don't drink and you don't want to be around that? I think we have to allow for other things to happen outside. It's the right of way. It's the public's right of way. It's for everybody. And safety is the most important. Mm-hmm. But this is a level of let's give people opportunities to make small businesses and make them work. And that's hard. But
that is our challenge. We do not have enough space to allow for both.
Why isn't there a noise ordinance in the?
Pardon?
Why isn't there a noise ordinance?
There is a noise ordinance, and we enforce that as well. And and even to the point that council actually improved the noise ordinance last year, I think it was, or maybe it was a year and a half ago.
It was last year in the summer.
And last year in the summer, where they required them to actually point the speakers inside. They could no longer have the speakers point outside, and they are enforcing that. That's why I can now hear when one of the entertainment vehicles or one of the pedal taverns is playing too loud. We can definitely hear them now compared when they were on Broadway, when the stereos were out. It was all noise, no matter what. So you can definitely hear the difference now. So there is a noise ordinance, and we do enforce it.
The sidewalk vending reg does address noise and nuisance in the existing regulation as well.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm just going to say that I'm against expanding this. I think that we can just do enforcement. I think that's what we have, all these enforcement people that we've hired. That's what they're there for.
So I do not have, I know everyone thinks that we've hired all these enforcement, and we have, but they're covering the whole county. And if you think about the 25 that we have and we divide them over a week, and they're working 24 hours a day, that doesn't give you as many people in a time frame as everyone seems to think. So I appreciate that, and I know the enforcement is part of it, and we are enforcing, but we're not able to be in one place for a specific long time. They're constantly moving, they're constantly out there. They're enforcing not only the sidewalk vending, they're enforcing the ETVs, they're enforcing the pedal taverns, they're enforcing the noise ordinance that are within the right of way, they're enforcing the parking. So they're doing a lot of work, and to be able to have that type of coverage and depend strictly on enforcing, I think we would need to even add more people, because I just do not have enough coverages right now. Keep in mind also, when they write a ticket, they have to show up in court. So I lose them for a whole day when they're in court, because they have to show up. If someone appeals it, which of course we give everybody the right to do, they must show up in court and speak to that ticket that was written. So there is a lot that goes into an operation such as that. And again, I'm back to safety being the number one thing, and the fact that the sidewalks are crowded. We're seeing more and more visitors come to our city. Last year, B&A reported close to 18 million. This year, they're online for over 20 million, and they're anticipating close to 22 million. So we consistently are seeing our city expand and receive more visitors, which means there's more and more demand of pedestrian walking on the sidewalk. And that's why we're out there when we're rebuilding something, we're really trying to focus on expanding the sidewalk as wide as we can. And that has limitation because of the buildings. So we are in a confined and constrained space. And so what I really want to deliver on is the opportunity to reduce the amount of other activities that go on the sidewalk to leave it open for pedestrian traffic. And that's why Connect Downtown is also focusing in on that, to where we're getting people in the right space so that we're reducing the conflicts and making it safe for everyone.
Did you ask how many permit holders there were earlier?
It was 25, but that's only just sidewalk vendors.
That's only
In this
sidewalk
area?
vendors.
Or is that total across the city?
Total. That means they can vend
Anywhere?
anywhere in the city.
So when it says
That's permitted.
so NDOT conducted a bulk mail out to current sidewalk vending permittees, that was 25.
That is correct, yes.
Now, those permits are just, we don't have the locations that they've got to get.
They're not permitted for a specific location.
Yeah,
They can actually vend anywhere they want in Davidson County, as long as they are following the rules. So you will find that downtown, we have a lot of folks that are street vending, but they're on the private property and they're following the rules.
So they got to get a license for the cart, right?
They have to get a permit, and then they do have to check in with the health department, because there are rules, I mean, I have to share with you, I watched a food truck that's on private property dump their grease trap down our stormwater system. I took a picture of it and sent it into Hub, so we are having some of those violations occur that we need to get cleaned up, because that just goes straight to our water system. That goes into our rivers and into, our creeks and stuff. So we really want to get that cleaned up as well, and have everybody do their part and do it by the law.
So we have a sidewalk vending permit, and they have to get a license or permit for their cart. I guess where I'm getting at, do we know how many are in the Gulch? How many vendors, sidewalk vendors?
We would know only those that are permitted to be in there.
We don't have any certain number of how many are vending at any one time, because they do move around. And they move around also based on the time of day.
Okay.
But it's not anywhere in the county that they can, there's the DTC zoning or CF zoning.
I said the permit is valid anywhere in the county that they are allowed to vend. So they have to follow the law just like everybody else does.
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting data point to kind of show what the actual acreage of zoned area that they can be, because it's not big to begin with. And we've already taken out a huge chunk of the most popular place that you'd probably want to stand outside and sell something. because where is CF zoning even in the rest of the city? It's not going to be anywhere else either other than downtown, right? I would move to defer this another month and see if we can maybe have some more discussion around it.
I'm sorry, sir?
I hear you, any other questions or comments? Motion?
I would make a motion to defer this for a month.
Second.
It's been first and second. Any discussion or questions around the motion? Yes.
Chair, if I may, when we come back, I think that you had mentioned that you would like the map to be amended. Were you making a motion to amend the map to include the new DTC that includes the East Bank?
I mean, I don't think I need to put that in the motion, do I?
Not right now, but I didn't know if you were earlier. But either way, I think that since you are deferring it, legal would recommend that when you come back, we will work with NDOT to put
The updated map.
the updated map and to also include a written description of where you cannot bend.
Yes. So, yes.
And make sure that it's filed with the clerk and put
Does that need to
on
be a
public-
separate item
We can do that.
to update the map?
We'll update the map, and then we'll put in writing where they can't vend based on today's laws.
Right. Yes, which as a separate agenda item.
We can, or we can include it with
With this?
agenda item.
I think that's a separate, but I'll defer. It's not.
It can be separate, but I think it could also be included in the way we craft the agenda.
My concern is if this doesn't pass, the map won't pass.
No, what we're doing is updating the map based on the new adoption of the DTC.
Okay.
So it is what it is. That won't have anything to do with it. If you do not, in the future, adopt the Gulch, then basically, we just don't expand the map over to the Gulch.
Okay. Would also like in the deferral for next month, if there's any way we can find out how many vendors are down there and potentially find spots or alternatives to a full restriction, that would be great.
Okay, we'll take a look.
Just try.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This item has been deferred 1 month. Thank you. Item 7.4, Smart Loading Pilot Update by Mr. Schultz.
Thank you, Chair. Brent Schultz, I'm the Connect Downtown Coordinator. I wanted to give you a quick update of what's happened since you last saw this project. I've been working diligently with Brad and Diana on it. And just by way of a little background, you first heard about this program June 10th, 2024 at a presentation by Automotus. And they ran through the program, how it all works. It's really amazing technology to help us better manage curb management in our busiest areas in the downtown area. And this is identification number 95 in the Connect Downtown Plan. We're implementing exactly what that approved plan by Metro Council called for. And it calls for it to be done by 2024, 2026. I'm on the third slide. Oh, I'm going too fast. Okay. So that's the first slide. And the area we're talking about is really from First Ave all the way over to 6th. That's where the pilot project is. It's not everywhere. It's just on that street. By the way, there's about 20 locations on light poles that these cameras will be placed. So again, it's to deal with the curb management and what we're seeing in the downtown. I've been spending a lot of time down there on my e-bike, working on corrals all over the downtown. And boy, you can see all the problems that this is going to try to correct. You just sit there and watch it, and people blocking lanes and the inefficient use of the curb area. We're hopeful that this pilot program will help us solve that. So we've been meeting with key stakeholders in the downtown on policies, procedures, how we're going to enforce it, our permit process on that. And then spending a lot of meetings with NES and AT&T. NES, they control about, I think it's 18 of those light poles we need to go to. Well, guess what they want? Structural details. What kind of power do we need to them? So we've had a number of meetings with them, Brad and I, and they're working great with us. The NES folks have been great. AT&T's been great. But again, Automotive has had to prepare these structural details. How are they going to hang on there? They want to make sure those companies, they're not going to fall. We don't want them to fall. They're going to take wind loads. And then what kind of power needs they have. So, and their Automotive has the final precise site plans they've given them. We're going to have a few more meetings so we can get them to approve it. And then I'm going to get the permit so that we can actually attach to those 18 or those 20 or so light poles down there from 1st to 6th. So what do I want to focus on next? It's on come down to my office at NDOT, you'll see on my whiteboard, those are up there. Get the Automotive plans approved by NES, AT&T, get those pole attachment permits, then come back to you sometime in there for the Smart Loading Zone Pilot Management Plan and Rate Procedure, which you saw, I think, in July, that we've continued. That will come back to you. And then schedule Automotives to do the camera installs estimated in early winter 2025. And I'm hoping it's operational by then and we can be going and start gathering that data to see what really is happening on that curb. And
quick question. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and there's no vote or anything. This is just an update, and we're here to answer any questions you might have.
So on the last slide, you said approval from NES and AT&T. I mean, are they working with you all? What's that look like?
They have been awesome.
Really?
I've done a lot of downtown work before, and you ask a utility, can I go on your poles? And they say no.
Right.
And that was any city where that was our utility. And NES has been great. I think Brad can vouch for that meeting. They were, how can we help you get on there? What kind of power needs do you have? There's some intricacies to how the powers run to some of those poles.
Okay.
And so we've had to work with that and how to get power to these cameras. And I think that's going well. And I think the rest of the meetings are going well.
Are they going to let you do it for free? And if not, how do they charge for that?
There is a special meter on these poles that they're going to put, and they'll charge us for the electrical usage of these cameras. But the electrical usage is, at least in my opinion, is very low. They don't seem to draw a lot of power to run and operate. So
there's not a solar option for that?
They actually, I think, have a solar option.
Electrical
It's
backup.
a new one that they are, I don't think we're going to have them on ours, right, Brad? But they did talk about that recently.
Some of the sites actually will leverage the solar unit, the solar battery, because some of the sites they have where power is actually not metered at the pole, so they actually turn them off during certain periods of days, so they would need to actually have a battery backup to actually run those. So yes, there are some that will have a solar panel associated with them as well.
Just going to point it out, since we're talking about it, my employer is mentioned up on there, so may have to recuse myself from a vote, I assume. Again.
Who is it?
But this is just an update, so
Who
it's
is your
okay to sit
employer?
here. AT&T.
And I guess we would discuss with you what you do with AT&T.
At the moment, nothing related to polls.
I think if you have a financial interest that could be affected with regard to your employment and this project, that could pose a conflict.
Okay.
But we can discuss further.
Okay, yeah, I'll check in with y'all.
We would need to
Before
know
the
more
next
about your job.
Sounds like we've got an AT&T liaison. You would have to recuse yourself
Not gonna
then.
do that.
But
I'm not doing that.
I may call on you if you can help us.
any other questions?
You're just joking, right, Brett?
Yes, I'm joking.
Any other questions? Well, we appreciate the update, and we look forward to the next steps.
Great, thank you.
Item 7.5, Cheatham Place Always Stop Appeal. Mr. Haggerty? I'm sorry, I hate to cut you off. It says appeal, this is the vote. Okay, so we're up. You're still to speak to, okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Derek Hagerty, NDOT. And yes, here to, I guess, uphold our asking the Traffic and Parking Commission to uphold our denial of an all-way stop control at the intersection of Cheatham and Delta, Cheatham and 9th, and Cheatham and 10th. But I know we've discussed this a little bit at previous meetings, so I think you have all the information. Andrew did a great job with the staff analysis. It's all there. At this location, it's one of 3 that we chose for a pilot tactical urbanism traffic circle installation. So you can see some of the designs around that. Those were installed last Monday. And that's really the update we have now. But yeah, just looking forward to uphold the denial.
Go ahead.
Initial feedback from the council member has been positive, based on his feedback from the community in their behavior that he's experienced. As far as it is slowing people down around those.
Okay. Questions? You got?
You got to lead with this one next time.
Do what now?
Let's lead with the good news next time.
Yeah, we should cycle the agenda, right?
I was like, what? I drove through this last month and I was like, I don't know what they're about to do, but that's awesome that they put in a traffic circle.
What do you have in your calendars every other month, or the second Monday at 3? You can add it.
Veterans Day next month.
Okay, we're out. No other questions? Do we have a motion?
So our motion is to uphold the denial?
Yes.
That is correct. That's what we're asking.
Okay, so moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is passed. Thank you. All right. Item 8, new business, NDOT stop sign policy.
That's under other items. I don't know if you'll recall, the council member had asked NDOT staff last month for information on how stop signs are approved, and I included the policy document that the commission had approved, I think about 18 months ago or so. This is a non-voting item. If you have any questions about how stop warrants or stop sign or always stop warrants are conducted, please let me know and I'll be happy to answer any questions. But this is a non-voting item.
Yeah. Any question?
I think we did talk about it last month of maybe kind of seeing, if there are unwarranted areas that we've approved in the past. Maybe that's something we can talk about next month and kind of think through.
Oh my gosh, that is so much work, sir. That is not going to be something easy to go and,
Director, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. I remember when I first started the job and I came in and Faye DiMaggio was actually, who was my mentor. I remember her prepping me to walk into the first traffic and parking meeting and going, yeah, and they would treat stop signs like it was in a vending machine. They'd throw a quarter in there and pick it, and then the stop sign would drop in that intersection. And so that is a lot of work. So as we actually have taken the approach that as we are reviewing through Vision Zero crashes, we will do a warrant to make sure if there's a stop sign involved, we'll do a warrant. If it's not warranted, we will then remove it. And then also if we run across it in some of the updates that we're doing, and we'll do a warrant and it's not warranted, again, we'll remove it. So but no one was really tracking the number of stop signs that just got put in because someone requested it. And it would be a lot of work to go back through a lot of the minutes and try to pull that up.
Maybe the request we could see how this pilot goes of these circles, see the cost.
Yes.
See if that is something that we can easily roll out as we see issues.
Correct. And we're actually doing the test in 2 other areas, just to let you know. We're doing one out in a more rural area at the request of Councilmember Huffman. And we're also doing another set area of traffic circles in Councilmember Taylor. So we'll actually have them in 3 different demographic areas with with different types of use, or I want to say driving behavior. So I feel like over the next 6 months, when we get that all into play, we'll have some really good evaluation about how effective they are, or what we need to, like Councilmember Coopin said, hey, they're working great. I don't want you to touch them, but I do want you to do some type of, education piece, a flyer that I can pass out on how to use them better, and stuff that I can share with my neighborhood. And I said, we'll put that together. So, we can come back, and we're testing this in different areas to make sure that this is going to be a solution we want to continue to consider as we move forward.
That's great. Yeah, that was one of the highlights of my Austin trip, was seeing beautiful traffic circles that they had put in, which I think we're doing in 12 South as well.
Yes, we are. We're putting one in down at the 12th and I forget the street. Yes. Yeah. And so the one I think Councilmember Coopin shared with me is right now they're just kind of boring and aesthetically. He says they're not pretty. And I said, well, talk to me about how you want to make them pretty. And so I think there's some opportunities still with the community to do that. So he's going to start working on that to see what we can do to aesthetically make the circles more attractive for the community members.
Yeah, I would just suggest with the denials, if there was a way to, I guess, include other, I don't know, just like other options to community members, or I don't know how we even got so in the weeds of that one last time. But I felt like alternatives were like the last things that were brought up, and it just kind of, got really heated for.
Yes, we are definitely, so, some opportunities and that having that conversation with Councilmember Coopin's allowed us to have some of those different conversations. So we are looking at other opportunities that are in our traffic calming toolbox for consideration. But the traffic circles seem to be a good success in better managing the intersection for folks so that it creates a safer environment.
You guys wouldn't typically see traffic calming because that's not a scheduled traffic item.
Any other questions? Thank you for that information. Valet operator license summary, we had 1717 parking enterprises effective 10/1/2024. Any comments there? Okay. Item 9.3, a Vision Zero summary. That's specifically related to crash statistics.
Yes, that have led to fatalities. So Diana Alarcon again, so what's before you is where we are year to date. As you can see, we're still below last year at this time, year to date, but we are creeping up way too close. We just we're putting out a lot of marketing initiatives to get to this reduction of fatalities happen on our roadway. We'll continue to work very closely with our friends over at the police department. And that's why when I had spoken about the speed reduction, there's an opportunity to continue that conversation on the culture of Vision Zero about getting to zero fatalities on our roadway network. So we are really going to be focusing in on that messaging and that education as we move forward on rolling those out and going back and doing the same thing on Dickerson as well. But as we bring more safety studies, speed studies, before y'all, we're looking at what is that best outreach as we implement it and move them forward as well. To just continue to drive down fatalities, because we really do not want to exceed last year. We want to be below it. And it's a shame because we're getting into the time of year when I think people start getting silly. They don't stop and think about, because we're getting into the holidays. So we're going to work really hard on some messaging there about Uber and Lyft and taking a taxi. And, so I got to hit the chief up and see if he'll do a quick commercial about go have a good time, enjoy yourself, but leave the car, give the keys, take a taxi, something along that line. So we can encourage, again, different behavior, a different culture. Thank you.
Any other questions? Great. Item 9.4. So next month's meeting is on Veterans Day. So we have this conference room reserved on Tuesday, November 12th, 2024 at 1:30. we feel it's still important that we have this meeting next month, given the number of items that we have that are towards the end of the year and that we're coming up. So wanted to check with the commission's availability and staff for meeting on Tuesday at 1:30 on the 12th of next month instead of our regular scheduled time.
Your staff is available at the commission's will.
Great.
Chair, legal, well, it's a possibility, legal may have a hard stop at like 3:30.
Great. We can have a hard stop too, if that's
Okay.
a requirement.
We have a board meeting at 9:30 and we've got one at 4, on
there's a
Tuesday, the
vision-
12th.
There's a Vision Zero meeting that follows on that Tuesday in this room, so you
What
will
time?
have a hard stop, as she says, because we have to give it up for the Vision Zero committee.
Okay.
We'll keep the.
Agenda. Okay.
As much as we can.
Availability?
We'll try to pull a lot of that data together and send it out ahead of time. And then that way, if there is something that comes up, we can have a conversation on that. But we'll try to get all that data pulled together and sent out to y'all ahead of time.
So y'all are comfortable you can get what we need?
As much as we can. What we can't, we'll tell you we weren't able to collect, but we'll have it for you in December then. But what we can get, we'll pull together for you. I think, like, it's not hard for us. I can go pull out of the CAL system how many permits have been pulled for practically everything that can feed into what you want. So outside dining, I can provide for you that we know what the number is for the number of permits for sidewalk vending, whatever other permits y'all have requested in the minutes, we can go pull most of that.
Well,
It's everything on the back.
yeah, we'll also be voting for chair and vice chair next month as well. So the meeting will be pretty important. So I guess we need to make a motion on to either have it or cancel it. Is black and white as that, or? Yeah,
Yes, you need a motion to,
I guess, is everybody available?
Don't we have a training on that day? Or is it the week before? There's an email sent out about a training?
We didn't receive an email about a training.
What, November
Yeah, I
12th?
believe that came from our
1:30?
PIO group. Y'all should have received it. I'll make sure they remove the 12th. If y'all decide that the 12th is going to work for y'all, I will make sure they remove it, but that's just really kind of, y'all are supposed to be at it too. So I got to talk to Courtney. If y'all decide to have it, I'll make sure that's not on your calendar. Thank you for letting me know.
Do we need to check with the councilwoman?
I think as long as you have a quorum,
We're good?
you're good.
Okay. Do we have a motion to move the meeting to November 12th? Tuesday, November 12th at 1:30?
Yeah, motion to move the meeting to November 12th at 1:30.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Been first and second. Any question or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is passed. Captain?
Motion to adjourn.
Approved. Thank you all.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.